You believe your circumstances, your past, or your lack of luck is what holds you back. This is the single greatest illusion, stripping you of your power. An illusion you must now learn to shatter. This is not another motivational speech. It is a declaration of war against the weak version of yourself that you have tolerated for too long. That version, the one that chooses comfort, rationalizes procrastination, and lives a life of almost, does not deserve another chance. It is the saboteur within, the part of you that has become an expert at making you fail quietly, day after day. You will learn that this weakness is not your destiny. It is a trained habit of surrender, and it must be killed not with a single blow, but with 1,000 small, consistent cuts of action. We will dismantle the lies of your comfort zone and face the uncompromising truth that maturity is simply the acceptance of radical, total responsibility. This journey will provide the blueprint for building unshakable belief, reprogramming your subconscious mind, and making the non-negotiable decisions that finally break the cycle. You will stop being a victim of your emotions and start becoming the architect of your destiny. If you are sick of living a life far below your potential, this is the moment you stop excusing your old self and start building the new one. The weak version of you does not deserve another chance. It does not deserve your pity, your patience, or your negotiation, because it is the very part of you that has quietly, methodically, and relentlessly stripped away your discipline, your dreams, and every single promise you have ever made to yourself, only to abandon them at the first sign of friction. It is the part of you that stays drowsy just before the dawn, the part that remains lazy in the face of necessary discipline, and the part that is overflowing with sophisticated, logical excuses the very moment action is required. This internal saboteur never screams out loud. It never heroically declares that it will destroy you. It does so silently, in the small, seemingly insignificant moments. In every minute you choose to procrastinate, in every empty, hollow promise you make to your future self, and every single time you allow yourself, with a sigh of relief, to quit halfway through. That version of you is not just weak. It has, through your years of toleration, become an expert at making you fail quietly, day after day. You cannot, under any circumstances, live a grand, meaningful, or powerful life if you continue to forgive and make space for that version. The more you tolerate it, the more ground you cede, and the more you fundamentally lose yourself. This weak self is the true, hidden source of your stagnation. It is the real reason every ambitious plan you write gets inevitably delayed until tomorrow. It is the seductive, reasonable voice that tells you there is still plenty of time, that you can rest just a bit longer, that no one will possibly notice if you just skip today. But the cold, hard truth is this: every single time you choose to listen to that voice, you are digging your own grave, deepening the rut of an ordinary, forgettable life. And eventually, if this continues, you will wake up one day, perhaps decades from now, and you will not even be able to remember what you once so passionately wanted, what you once dreamed of achieving. All that will remain is a smooth, predictable, and utterly forgettable cycle of days, repeating themselves into oblivion. The single most dangerous attribute of this weak version is not its inherent laziness. It is its profound, almost diabolical ability to rationalize. It is a master philosopher of mediocrity. It makes you feel completely justified in putting things off. It gives you the immediate, warm, and seductive payoff of short-term comfort, all at a very steep, hidden price. The irreversible loss of your inner strength, your self-respect, and your core identity. It brilliantly tricks you into thinking that choosing this easy comfort is the ultimate expression of freedom. when in reality, it is the most sophisticated and velvet-wrapped prison ever constructed. And if you are not alert enough, not conscious enough to see this mechanism at work, you will live your entire life inside that cage. The door always technically open, yet you never choose to step out. And then, in your quiet moments, you will start to wonder, with a gnawing sense of confusion and despair. Why am I so stuck in place? Why do I begin so many things but never, ever finish? Why do I talk so much more than I act? You already know the answer. It is not because you lack the skill or the talent or the external opportunity. It is because you have, for far too long, allowed a weaker, compromised version of yourself to hold the steering wheel of your behavior. You no longer make your daily decisions based on your highest goals or your deepest values. You make them based on the fleeting, unreliable currency of your moment-to-moment emotions. You do not act because of a larger, compelling vision. You merely react to your immediate circumstances, your temporary feelings of fatigue or boredom. And that, precisely that, is what keeps you permanently trapped. Be brutally honest with yourself, just for this one moment. How many times in the past year have you started something promising, vowing to follow through, only to quietly give up the moment it got genuinely hard? How many times have you backed away from a challenge, not with a bang, but with a whisper, without ever forcing yourself to face the real reason for your retreat? That is because you have become accustomed to letting the weak version decide for you. It has been fed, day by day, by your allegiance to comfort. It has grown strong with every "I'll do it tomorrow," with every uncompleted task, with every habit of incompletion, and with the persistent, delusional belief that someday you will magically find the energy or the time to return to it. You need to understand this on a cellular level. If you keep living like this, you will never, ever get the chance to meet the better, stronger version of yourself. Because that strong version, the warrior, the creator, the finisher, is never born in the warm bath of comfort. It is forged painfully, necessarily, in every single moment you consciously fight your own laziness. It is built in every hour you work diligently without the promise of immediate applause. It is solidified, like tempered steel, every single time you keep a promise to yourself, especially when no external reward awaits you. True inner strength does not come from fleeting, passive inspiration. It comes from your active, daily ability to say no, without mercy, to your old, compromised self. No one can do that for you. No book, no video, no charismatic coach can reach inside you and eliminate that weak version if you are still, secretly, holding on to it, protecting it, perhaps even loving the excuses it provides. You and only you must be the one to finally, decisively decide. You must choose. Either you keep feeding the internal saboteur who offers you only comfort and decay, or you begin, today, to deliberately build the inner guide who offers you only discipline and growth. There is no middle ground. There is no comfortable neutrality. Every single choice you make, from the moment your alarm rings, whether to get up and begin your work, or to stay lying down in the illusory warmth, is a definitive vote for one of those two opposing versions of yourself. Here is a truth you must engrave upon your mind. Action is the only dividing line. Action is the currency that separates the weak from the resilient. The strong are not people who always feel okay. They too get tired. They too are haunted by doubt. They too have dark, difficult days where everything feels meaningless. But they do not, under any circumstances, let those internal, fluctuating emotions decide their ultimate fate. They keep moving. They do not wait for motivation to strike. They do not wait for applause. They just act no matter how they feel. And it is that cold, relentless consistency that ultimately destroys the weak version. Not with a single dramatic blow, but with 1,000 small cuts, delivered mercilessly without compromise, day after day. Every single time you choose to act despite your negative emotions, you are draining the lifeblood out of that weak version. Every time you finish a task you used to avoid, you are strengthening the new guide within you. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, even when no one on earth is watching, you are rewriting the very definition of who you are. And then one day, you will look for that weak version, and you will realize it no longer exists, not because you hated it into submission, but simply because you stopped giving it the one thing it needs to live. The oxygen of your compliance, the space of your inaction. The harsh, final truth is this: if you do not consciously, deliberately, and methodically eliminate that weak version, it will, slowly but surely, eliminate you. It will rob you of your confidence. It will waste your precious, finite youth. And it will ensure that you wake up each morning with the same sinking, acidic feeling that you are living a life far, far below your true, magnificent potential. And if that realization does not make you want to act, then nothing else ever will. It is not that the world is too hard. It is that you have, perhaps with the best of intentions, allowed an inferior, compromised version of yourself to exist for far too long. Time will not wait for you. Opportunities will not repeat themselves. But the choice, in this very moment, is always yours. And the very first, most urgent choice you must now make is not to create a new, elaborate plan. And it is not to go searching for more external inspiration. It is simply to decisively, finally, kill off the old self. No drama is needed. Just a series of new, bold, non-negotiable actions. A clear, internal decision. I will not live like this for one more day. And from that single, powerful, unshakable moment, everything changes. No real transformation. The kind that fundamentally alters the very atoms of your life, ever begins with the soft comfort of lying to yourself. The first truth, and also the harshest, is that you have allowed yourself to drift for far too long. No one external forced you to procrastinate. No one held a gun to your head and made you break the sacred promises you whispered to yourself in the dead of night. No one stole your opportunities. It was you. It was you in the quiet, seemingly insignificant moments when you chose the comfortable excuse, when you avoided the necessary, difficult action, and when you comforted your own conscience with half-told, self-soothing stories, consoling yourself with the fragile, empty feeling that, at least I'm trying, is not transformation. It is merely a sophisticated, intellectual disguise, an anesthetic you administer to yourself to keep from feeling the acute, clarifying pain of your own guilt. But every night, in the profound, revealing silence just before you sleep, you know. Deep down, you know, with an unshakable and often painful certainty, that you are not living up to the magnificent vision you once held for yourself. The uncompromising truth does not arrive in your life to hurt you. It arrives like a harsh but necessary medicine to wake you up. It is a perfect, cold mirror. It does not distort the image to flatter you. It does not add a gentle, hazy filter to soften the blow. It does not try to make the stark reality of your current state more bearable. It simply and ruthlessly reflects what is, where you are, what you have actually done, and more importantly, what you have failed to do. If you do not possess the raw courage to look this unvarnished truth in the eye, you will never, ever change. Because real, lasting change does not arise from the warm, comfortable, and validating incubator of self-acceptance alone. It begins in the cold, sharp, clarifying moment you can no longer, under any circumstances, tolerate living the same old way. And the greatest danger you currently face lies in how astonishingly, dangerously accustomed you have become to your own self-justification. I'm just tired. I need more time to research and prepare. I'll start again next week, Monday for sure. These words sound reasonable. They sound kind, even compassionate. But in truth, they are the soft, velvet blankets you use to lovingly mask your own stagnation. And the longer you wrap yourself in these comfortable justifications, the further you drift from the hard, unforgiving coastline of reality. You are the startup founder who spends an entire year perfecting the business plan, instead of spending one single, terrifying day talking to a potential customer. You are the wantrepreneur who has read 100 books on business but has never made a single sale. Confusing the accumulation of knowledge with the execution of it, you eventually no longer distinguish between genuine, productive effort and the complex, exhausting illusion of action you have created to rationalize your own deep-seated inaction. This inaction has a devastating and compounding economic cost. It is not just the success you forfeit today. It is the opportunity cost of the life you are not living, the skills you are not building, the ventures you are not launching, and the character you are not forging. You do not need another perfect plan. You do not need another surge of fleeting external motivation. What you need, what this moment demands of you, is the raw, unflinching courage to finally face yourself. To sit down, alone, with no blaming, no defending, and no excuses, and ask the one question that truly matters. Why haven't I, in fact, changed yet? Not because of your job, not because of your partner or your family, not because of the geopolitical climate or the state of the market, but because of you. Because you have deliberately, though perhaps unconsciously, nurtured a culture of chronic leniency toward your weakest self. You have consistently, day after day, chosen the fleeting comfort of your immediate emotion over the steel-like resolve of your long-term commitment. You have systematically prioritized the immediate, low-value reward of momentary comfort over the delayed, high-value, compounding reward of long-term growth. This is the very essence of what the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre called bad faith. The insidious act of lying to oneself, of hiding the terrible truth of one's own freedom and total responsibility behind a facade of reasonable excuses. As long as you continue to avoid that core question, you will remain permanently, inextricably stuck in your old, familiar loop. And no one, not me, not a mentor, not a book, not a savior, can pull you out of it. Because the very essence of human transformation is voluntary action. No one can force you forward. No one can compel your growth. Transformation only, and only, happens when you finally dare to face the root of the problem and stop, once and for all, painting over the truth with more comforting lies. Stop calling your procrastination preparation. Stop calling your chronic lack of discipline self-love. Call it what it is. Identify it. Name it. Only then can you begin to systematically restructure your life. You can read hundreds of books on strategy. You can listen to thousands of hours of advice from the masters. But if you continue to live your life halfway, if you never fully execute, if you never risk the sting of real-world feedback, all of that accumulated knowledge remains purely theoretical. It is inert, worthless data. True change, the kind that builds empires and forges character, begins only in the moment you can no longer stand the psychic pain of repeating the same limited version of yourself from yesterday. It begins when you are finally, viscerally disgusted by your own habit of talking without doing. When you are repulsed by the familiar, comfortable, and cowardly reflex of quitting halfway. When you no longer, under any circumstances, want to live a predictable, dull, and painfully repetitive life. The cost of not facing this truth, the true economic cost, does not show up on your balance sheet immediately. It comes slowly, insidiously, through the gradual, compounding depreciation of your single most valuable asset, your own self-belief. It comes through the slow, almost imperceptible fading of the dreams you once held so dearly. It comes through the quiet, cold resignation that settles into your heart and whispers, maybe this is as good as it gets. Maybe this is as far as I go. This, right here, is the real bankruptcy. But deep inside, beneath all the layers of excuses and rationalizations, you know you can do more. You know you have not tapped into even a fraction of your full strength. You know there were distinct moments, turning points, when you were close, so achingly close, to touching a better, stronger version of yourself. And yet, you let go. Why? Because you were not radically honest with yourself, because you still foolishly believed you had an infinite amount of time. But time does not repeat. Each day that passes, each sun that sets, either brings you one step closer to your strongest self, or it takes you one step further away into decay and compromise. The true turning point, the moment of your rebirth, does not lie in some grand external event. It lies in one simple, internal decision. I will no longer excuse my own ambiguity. From the very moment you dare to call your procrastination by its true name, to call your unkempt promises the small betrayals they are, to finally admit, with a freeing sense of surrender, I have not done enough. You have already begun the sacred and difficult process of change. No more self-soothing, no more empty promises, no more dressing up your failures with eloquent excuses. Only clarity and the very next necessary action. You cannot keep living this destructive double life. One part a noble dreamer with grand ideals, the other a chronic, pathetic, and deeply unreliable excuse maker, quitter, and avoider. Self-respect, the absolute bedrock of all lasting success and inner peace, simply cannot and will not grow in the toxic, acidic soil of internal deceit. You only begin to truly mature when you surgically, mercilessly sever your own ability to lie to yourself. When you finally, fully accept, with no room left for negotiation, I am fully 100% responsible for everything I have done and for everything I have, until this moment, failed to do. And it is from that raw, painful but incredibly powerful point of total acceptance that you can, at last, begin to build a new process. A process not based on the fleeting whims of inspiration, but grounded in the non-negotiable, crystalline clarity of your own integrity. A process that requires no external supervision, because you have finally, definitively, taken control. A process where each new step, no matter how small, is built on the unshakable foundation of absolute, radical honesty. Remember this: you cannot change if you are not first honest about where you truly stand. No one builds a magnificent life from a false map, and if you continue to sugarcoat your reality, you will simply wander in circles forever, haunted by a growing, unshakable disappointment. The truth may hurt, but that pain is the purifying fire of awakening. Not everyone has the courage to step into it. But those who do, they, and only they, gain the chance to truly, finally transform their lives. No one is born weak. No one enters this world with a preset, deterministic gene that fatally programs them to give up halfway. Weakness is not a destiny you are assigned. It is the cumulative result of a long, often unconscious chain of repeated choices, a series of small surrenders left unquestioned and unchecked. You did not become soft, you did not become hesitant, because you fundamentally lacked ability. You became this way because, without realizing it, you have meticulously trained yourself in the habit of surrender. You have, perhaps for years, rehearsed the act of quitting until now, it no longer even feels wrong. It has become an automatic, deeply ingrained reflex. Every time things get genuinely hard, the automatic response is to stop. Every time you feel the brush of fatigue, the first instinct is to retreat, and you no longer even recognize that this act, this seemingly harmless, gentle withdrawal from discomfort, is actively building a version of you that, deep down, you are not and cannot be proud of. Look back at your own past with ruthless honesty. How many times have you made ambitious plans, your heart filled with strong resolve, only to find that resolve evaporate, your follow-through lasting only a few meager days? How many times have you started a new project, a new diet, a new venture, with an intense, fiery motivation, only to lose it all, completely, because of one justified, lazy day? Those short breaks, those seemingly innocent, "I'll just let myself relax a little" moments, you thought they were harmless, a form of self-care. But they were, in fact, quietly and insidiously forming a devastating behavioral pattern, a core loop that now defines your operational code. Face discomfort, then immediately retreat. Encounter difficulty, then immediately give up. And the more reasonably you justify your decision to quit, the more you erode the sharp, non-negotiable, diamond-hard edge of your inner discipline. What you may not realize is that you have been, with the precision of a master animal trainer, conditioning your own brain to avoid effort at all costs. You have successfully taught your body that procrastination is the correct response to a challenging task. You have programmed your nervous system, your ancient primal limbic system, to default to safety. The safety of the familiar, the comfort of the known, rather than to choose persistence, which is the uncomfortable, unfamiliar, and high-energy territory of all human growth. No one external forced you to become weaker. You, yourself, made the same small, weakening choices over and over and over. And that repetition, in itself, became the final, binding decision. The problem, you see, does not lie in some big, spectacular, cinematic failure. People do not collapse and fail in their lives because of one single tragic mistake. They become weak. They become fragile. They become ineffective. From the slow, steady, crushing accumulation of hundreds of small surrenders. Surrenders so small, so trivial, they fly completely beneath the radar of your conscious mind. One unfinished task, one more tap of the snooze alarm, one "I'm just not in the mood" excuse. 1 minute of mindless distraction that, unchecked, stretches into an hour into an afternoon into a day into a month, and suddenly, a whole year has passed, and you are standing in the exact same place, with no real, tangible progress to show for it. This is the startup that fails not from a market crash, but from 1,000 tiny, unaddressed bugs and a culture of good enough. This is the economy that stagnates not from one single catastrophic event, but from a generation of prioritizing immediate consumption over long-term investment. Your life operates under the same unforgiving laws. It is not because you lack ability that you have failed to progress. It is because you have, brick by brick, built a prison of low standards and then, tragically, have grown used to living inside it. Each time you stop halfway, each time you choose comfort over your commitment, you are forging a new, toxic neural link in your brain. Your nervous system begins to chemically associate the very act of giving up with the immediate, pleasurable dopamine hit of relief. You train yourself to associate doing nothing with a feeling of safety. Over time, after enough repetitions of this cycle, you no longer view your own stagnation as an anomaly or a failure. It becomes your default setting. It becomes your new normal. And the most terrifying part of this entire process is that you begin to accept it. You rationalize it. You even begin to defend it, telling yourself, this is just the way I am. But here's the good news, the central liberating truth of your entire existence. Just as you, through unconscious, repeated choices, trained yourself to grow weak, you can, with conscious, deliberate choices, train yourself to become strong again. Your brain is, by its very nature, flexible. Your nervous system is, and always will be, reprogrammable. This is the fundamental, proven law of neuroplasticity. The only condition, the only price of admission for this transformation is that you must have the courage, the raw nerve, to finally sever those old, comfortable circuits. The circuit that automatically equates "I'm tired" with "I must rest now." The circuit that whispers "I'm bored" and concludes, therefore, I must stop. The circuit that observes "I don't see immediate results" and fatally decides, therefore this is not working and I must quit. Each and every time you choose to act contrary to those old, deeply ingrained habits, you are physically, literally, redrawing the reflex map of your own brain. You are building a new neural pathway, a pathway for resilience, for discipline. And if you do it often enough, consistently enough, a new, stronger identity will inevitably emerge. You do not have to become a superhuman overnight. You just need to start, today, by doing the precise opposite of what your weaker, conditioned self would usually choose. When you feel the familiar, seductive, heavy pull of delay, you must start immediately. When you feel no desire, no passion, no spark of inspiration, you must act for just 5 minutes. When the final results seem impossibly far away, you must remember that this moment, right here, this moment of grinding, unglamorous, unapplauded work, is the very moment you are forging your endurance. You do not need to feel amazing to take action. You just need to understand that action, and action alone, is the only tool that can break the old, rusted reflex chain. Picture yourself as a world-class athlete who has spent years unknowingly training with incorrect, damaging, and inefficient technique. Now, a new coach, your conscious, aware mind, has arrived. You must retrain your body, your reflexes, from scratch. It will feel awkward. It will feel wrong. It will feel completely, terrifyingly unnatural. Your very muscles, your very nervous system, will scream at you to go back to the old, easy, familiar way. But this very discomfort you feel is not a sign that you are failing. It is the physical sensation of a new foundation being laid. It is the feeling of new neural pathways being carved and old ones withering away. It is the feeling of growth itself. And if you stay the course, if you have the grit to endure this temporary, transitional discomfort, what once felt wrong will, inevitably, become your new normal. What was once agonizingly difficult will become your automatic routine. What once made you hesitate and retreat will become your new, powerful instinct. Do not wait for inspiration to change your life. Inspiration is a fleeting spark, a fair-weather friend. It is not and has never been a sustainable fuel. What you need is a new behavioral system. A system where, every time you want to stop, you consciously, deliberately push just one step further. This is not just about fighting off laziness. This is about the high-level, strategic reprogramming of your very sense of self. True strength is not the absence of fatigue. It is the choice to act even when you are tired. It is not the constant presence of motivation. It is the sacred act of keeping your commitment to yourself, even when your motivation has long since vanished. The strong are not different by birth. They just simply do not allow retreat to become their familiar go-to reflex. From this day forward, begin to notice your micro-responses. Every time you are about to procrastinate, pause and ask yourself, what am I training right now? Because every single behavior is always training something. You are either training progress or you are training retreat. There is no gray zone. There is no neutral ground. And every single small choice, every repeated action, is accumulating, brick by brick, into the person, strong or weak, that you will ultimately have to live with for the rest of your life. You can read hundreds of books. You can listen to thousands of hours of advice from the greatest minds on earth. You can write out all your goals on a pristine whiteboard every single morning, filled with color-coded, passionate intention. But if you do not act, all of it, every last word, is nothing more than a beautiful, sophisticated illusion dressed in the mask of positivity. It is intellectual entertainment, a form of potential that has no market value. In the brutal, unforgiving economy of reality, as in the startup world, knowledge without execution is vaporware. It is a perfect business plan for a product that never gets built, a company that never makes a single sale. Its valuation is zero, action and only action. Not your motivation, not your accumulated knowledge, and certainly not those fleeting, perfect moments when you finally feel ready, is the only weapon, the only currency, the only undeniable force that can decisively, permanently extinguish the weaker, compromising version of you. That weaker version, your internal saboteur, does not fear your logic. It is, in fact, a master logician, brilliant at debating you into circles of inaction. It does not tremble at the thunderous, passionate declarations you shout in the mirror. It has heard them all before and knows you will soon be quiet. But it fears your action. Because real, tangible, consistent action is the one and only thing it cannot coexist with. It is the light that vaporizes the shadow. The weak version of you does not die because you suddenly start thinking more positively. It does not politely leave just because you have written down a new, inspiring plan for your life. It only begins to truly die, to wither and starve, when you finally, consistently do the very things you have been avoiding, delaying, and making excuses about. It perishes when you deliberately, courageously step into the very tasks it dreads, the challenges it resists, and the discomfort it finds so intolerable. That is the only moment you strike at the true root of its existence. That weak, entropic, comfort-seeking self survives and thrives in the comfortable, humid gap between your grand thoughts and your non-existent deeds. It grows stronger, fatter, and more arrogant through every cleverly justified act of procrastination. It overpowers you, whispering its seductive logic, precisely because you have allowed your behavior to be dictated by your fleeting emotions, instead of commanding your emotions with your disciplined behavior. Everything you are truly seeking, every quality you admire in others and wish you had for yourself, genuine, unshakable confidence, true, resilient strength, profound self-respect, real, sustainable inspiration. All of it lies on the other side of a single paywall. The paywall of action. There is no shortcut. There is no secret formula. You cannot rise by standing still. You must move. You must move even when, and especially when, the path forward is unclear. When your internal map is foggy. When every fiber of your being screams at you to rest, to stop, to just wait for a clearer sign. This is the fundamental, non-negotiable divide between the amateur and the professional, the philosopher and the doer. The amateur waits to feel good before they act. The professional, the true creator, understands that their action is not contingent upon their feeling state. It is a commitment, a principle, an act of will. They act from a place of identity, not a place of emotion. Do not, therefore, wait for motivation to act. This is the greatest lie the weak self tells you. You do not wait for the spark of motivation to arrive before you strike the match. You strike the match, and in that act of friction, the spark is born. Motivation is the result of action, not its cause. Inspiration comes after. You begin, not before. Belief grows after. You do the thing, not before you merely think about it. And this action does not need to be a grand, earth-shattering, heroic leap. Do not wait for that one singular turning point. That is another illusion. You must simply wake up 15 minutes earlier than you feel like. You must today finish that one small task you have delayed all week. You must right now say no to one old, comfortable, time-wasting habit. Every one of these small, seemingly insignificant actions is a brick. A brick that helps you demolish the prison house your weaker self has been hiding in for years. You do not need to shout slogans. You just need to do. And you must do it consistently, every single day, especially without an audience, especially without applause. Because the strong, resilient, powerful person you are building does not need a stage to perform on. They need a foundation. And that foundation is built only from the solid, tangible, concrete behaviors you practice daily. When you choose to act in those precise moments of internal resistance. When you feel the pull of procrastination and move anyway. You are doing more than just completing a task. You are, in a very literal sense, retraining your entire nervous system. You are forging a new, powerful neural pathway. You are establishing a new connection in your brain that declares a new law. I am the one who acts, even when I do not feel like it. And the magic, the true alchemy, is this. When you repeat that specific act of defiance enough times, your brain, in its magnificent efficiency, will begin to believe that this is your new standard, your new identity. You will not need to force it forever. You just need to stay consistent long enough for this new, disciplined action to become your new, automatic reflex. And once that happens, the weaker version of you, the one that lived on delay and excuses, no longer has a habitat. It no longer has a food source. It will die naturally, not through a violent battle, but simply because the very environment it needed to survive, your inaction, no longer exists. You might ask, but what if I am truly tired? What if I am genuinely, physically exhausted? This is where you must learn to distinguish, with the wisdom of a seasoned commander, between true physical exhaustion from real productive effort, which is a valid signal that demands proper rest and recovery, and the pervasive, heavy, mental fatigue that is caused by prolonged avoidance. The fatigue of procrastination, the weariness that comes from a day spent doing nothing of value, is a psychological symptom of the weaker version manipulating you. And the only remedy for that specific kind of fatigue is not an extra hour of sleep. It is movement, however small, regardless of how you feel. Action is also the only path to genuine self-belief. You will not learn to trust yourself just by talking about it. You will not feel confident just because someone else compliments you. All lasting, deep, core inner strength comes from one place: the accumulated record of keeping the promises you make to yourself. Every single time you follow through on what you said you would do. No matter how small, you whisper to your subconscious, "I am trustworthy. I am reliable. I am a person of my word." And the opposite is also devastatingly true. Every broken promise, every "I'll do it tomorrow" that never comes, sends a clear, toxic message. I cannot be trusted. My words are meaningless. I am not worthy of my own respect. The issue, you see, is not whether others believe in you. It is whether you believe in yourself. And that belief does not come from passive willpower. It comes only from the irrefutable evidence of your own repeated, consistent action. The stronger version of you does not need slogans. It needs you to wake up a little earlier, to focus an hour longer, to complete one small thing instead of delaying it one more time. Every small step is a brick. Every single act is a chisel, shaping your new identity. No one ever sculpts a masterpiece through dreams alone. You must be willing to touch reality with your hands, with your sweat, with your unrelenting daily consistency. If today you feel weak, that is okay, but do not let that feeling dictate your behavior. Stand up. Do something, anything. It does not have to be perfect. It just has to begin. Because as long as you are in action, you still have a chance. If you act repeatedly, you begin to transform. And if you maintain that action, day after day, a time will come, sooner than you think, when you will no longer even recognize the weak, hesitant person you used to be. No choice you make is ever truly meaningless, no matter how small, no matter how fleeting it may seem in the moment. Every single decision you make, from the instant your alarm shatters the morning silence, is an act of creation, actively shaping an identity. You are, in every second, sculpting one of two versions of yourself, either that of the warrior or that of the surrenderer. You do not, as you may have been taught to believe, accidentally become someone. You are not a fixed object, a static noun. You are a dynamic process, a verb. You become who you are, moment by moment, through the deliberate, day-by-day accumulation of these small, repeated behaviors, especially in those quiet, solitary, unwatched moments when no one else is there to applaud you, when no external lights are shining on you. In these sacred and defining moments, there is only one quiet, profound, and recurring question. Which version of yourself are you choosing to serve right now? With this single choice, when you choose to get up from your bed instantly, instead of negotiating with the snooze button for 10 more minutes of fragmented sleep, you are not just changing your morning routine. You are sending a clear, powerful message to your brain. You are casting a definitive vote that you are in control, not your fleeting, comfortable emotions. You are voting for the warrior. When you choose to finish that difficult, tedious task, pushing through the heavy fog of fatigue and boredom, you are not just completing a project. You are carving a new neural pathway where your commitment triumphs over your internal resistance. You are voting for the warrior. On the other hand, each time you give in, just this once, each time you allow yourself that little, reasonable compromise, each time you whisper the seductive lie of only today, you are actively, consciously feeding the weaker self. You are casting a vote for the surrenderer. And the most terrifying part of this entire process is that you cannot abstain from this election. You cannot not vote. Your silence is a vote. Your hesitation is a decision. Your inaction, your passive drifting, is a powerful behavior in itself. And if you are not actively, consciously, and deliberately moving, step by step, toward your chosen warrior identity, you are, by default, passively and automatically heading in the other, weaker direction. Your ego, your very sense of I, is not some vague, abstract, philosophical concept. It is the tangible belief system, the internal architecture that you are constructing, brick by brick, with your daily, repetitive behavior. This is not a New Age idea. It is one of the oldest truths of human philosophy. As Aristotle taught, character, or ethos, is not a state but a habitus, a disposition you build by repeatedly doing virtuous actions. You are not what you think you are. You are what you do repeatedly. This is precisely why true, unshakable confidence, the kind that radiates from a person like a low, steady, magnetic frequency, does not come from what you say loudly in public. It is not a performance. It is not a hollow affirmation you shout in the mirror. It comes only and ever from what you prove quietly to yourself, in the dark, in the lonely moments, when no one else is watching. Confidence is the result of accumulated internal evidence. You cannot lie to your own nervous system. You cannot give a rah-rah speech to yourself and expect to feel confident if your actual, lived actions for the past 30 days have been those of a consistent surrenderer. Your internal balance sheet of self-respect does not come from your stated intentions, which are like projected revenue in a business plan. It comes only from your actual, principle-driven actions, which are your realized profit. In the startup world, this is the very essence of building a company culture. A startup's true culture is not the list of aspirational values written on the office wall. It is the sum total of all the small, unwatched, difficult trade-offs and decisions that every single employee makes when the CEO is not in the room. Do they ship the code that is merely good enough, the surrenderer's vote? Or do they push for that extra 5% of polish that defines excellence, the warrior's vote? Do they avoid the difficult, awkward conversation about a team member's underperformance, the surrenderer's vote? Or do they have that conversation with candor and compassion, the warrior's vote? These thousands of daily micro-choices are the votes that build the company's true, operational identity. An identity that, far more than its funding or its initial idea, ultimately determines whether it succeeds or fails. Your personal identity is built in exactly the same way. You are becoming one of them, the warrior or the surrenderer, day by day. Through every seemingly harmless, seemingly insignificant decision. So do not, I implore you, underestimate those seemingly insignificant moments. The moment when you want to quit halfway through your workout, but you push on. The moment you want to delay that difficult phone call, but you make it immediately. The moment you stand at the crossroads between keep going and take a break. In those small, silent, atomic moments, you are not just making a choice. You are laying the very foundation of your future identity. And that foundation, when repeated with consistency, either becomes the solid, granite ground upon which a warrior stands, unshakable in the storm, or it becomes the soft, shifting sinkhole that inevitably swallows a chronic, lifelong quitter. You do not need to win every battle to become strong. You just need to win over yourself, consistently, in the smallest of choices. When you want to delay, act immediately. When you want to stop, push for just 5 more minutes. When things feel impossibly hard, hold your ground. Those seemingly trivial moments of friction are the birthplace of the most resilient identity you will ever own. Do not dismiss them. If this idea that your identity is not a fixed state but a structure you are actively building with your smallest, unseen choices feels valuable to you, perhaps it is a message worth sharing. You might have someone in your life, a friend or relative, who needs this powerful reminder that they are, in fact, the architect of their own character, one small, unwatched decision at a time. It is not that you lack the inherent ability. It is not that you are fundamentally weaker than other people. It is not that you are not smart enough, creative enough, or lucky enough. The hard, cold, and difficult to swallow truth is this: you are missing one single, crucial thing. You are missing the trained reflex to endure discomfort without breaking. We are, all of us, living in a world that is pathologically obsessed with convenience. We are citizens of the instant gratification economy. We have, as a society, successfully engineered almost all friction, all waiting, and all discomfort out of our daily lives. With a single click, we can summon food, entertainment, transportation, and perhaps most insidiously, social validation. But this vast new economic structure, this entire civilization built on the seductive promise of an effortless, frictionless existence, has a dark and hidden cost. In optimizing our lives for moment-to-moment comfort, we have slowly, unconsciously, and systematically allowed the single most important muscle for success and character to atrophy: our tolerance for emotional and psychological difficulty. Most of what you now label as your inability, your limitation, or your failure is, in fact, just this profound absence of tolerance, this untrained, flabby, and atrophied reflex. You give up on your goals not because you truly can't do the necessary work, but because you are no longer used to the feeling of discomfort that inevitably accompanies all meaningful work. Look back with radical, unflinching honesty at the moments you gave up, the projects you abandoned, the dreams you let die. Most of them did not begin with an actual, catastrophic, external failure, did they? They began, far more subtly, with a set of unmanaged internal emotions: the heavy cloak of persistent fatigue, the gray, suffocating fog of boredom, the disorienting whisper of confusion, the acidic, corrosive drip of self-doubt, the paralyzing fear of being wrong, the crushing and total lack of immediate enthusiasm. None of those things, not one, possesses the actual, inherent power to destroy your dream. They only possess the power to make you stop acting. And in the precise moment you stop acting, in that first seemingly innocent pause of hesitation, you begin the slow, subtle, internal retreat, until the thing that was once a burning, all-consuming fire of a dream becomes just a cold, distant, intellectual memory, something you second-guess, something you rationalize away. In the world of startups, this is known as the Valley of Despair. It is the brutal, agonizing, and entirely predictable phase in every new venture, coming just after the initial launch excitement has faded, but long before any significant, validating results have arrived. This valley is where 90% of all new ventures die. They do not die from a lack of a good idea. They die from a lack of emotional endurance. The founders, facing overwhelming discomfort, mounting uncertainty, and profound fear, simply stop. They quit. But the rare few who succeed, the unicorns, the companies that change the world, are not always the ones who had the best initial idea. They are, almost invariably, the ones who had the grit, the trained reflex to stay with the profound, daily discomfort of that valley longer than anyone else. Most success, therefore, does not come from a single, brilliant, cinematic breakthrough. It comes from the unglamorous, uncelebrated, and often excruciating ability to stay with the discomfort, to stay with the boredom, to stay with the grind longer than most people can or are willing to. The one who learns to sit with the gut-wrenching feeling of uncertainty, to keep showing up and doing the work while still feeling afraid, to persist for months or even years without seeing validating external results. That person does not find new potential. They unlock the potential they already had, a potential that was simply locked behind the terrifying, paper-thin door of their own discomfort. This is the core of all Stoic philosophy. The obstacle is the way. The discomfort you feel is not a signal from the universe to stop. The discomfort is the training itself, the very resistance you need to forge your strength. You have been meticulously conditioned by the convenience economy to avoid this feeling at all costs. Every time you feel the slightest hint of boredom or tension, you have been trained, like a rat in a cage, to grab your phone for a quick, cheap dopamine hit of distraction. Every time you feel stuck or confused, you have been trained to reach for the digital anesthetic of entertainment. Your brain has been meticulously, systematically trained by a multi-trillion-dollar economic system to seek out quick rewards, effortless shortcuts, and constant, frictionless comfort. But the path to real achievement, to genuine wealth, to profound, unshakable character, does not run through that easy, well-lit, paved superhighway. It goes, always and inevitably, through the long, dark, lonely hours of working when no one is watching. It goes through the profound, isolating loneliness of personal growth. The feeling of moving forward while everyone around you seems to be staying the same. It goes through the terrifying uncertainty of not knowing, for a very long time, whether you are even on the right path. Enduring this discomfort does not mean you are a masochist or that you must somehow glorify pain. It is, rather, a high-level psychological reflex. It is the very moment you achieve true, sovereign freedom. You are no longer ruled by how the discomfort feels. You can see it, you can notice it, you can acknowledge its presence, but you no longer allow that feeling to dictate your behavior. That is the precise moment you shift from being a passive, reactive creature, a helpless slave, to your fleeting emotions, to becoming an active, conscious creator, a master of your chosen principles. That is when you shift from living by fragile, unreliable willpower to living from the unshakable, internal structure you have deliberately built. Each time you push through that wall of resistance just a little longer, without giving up, you are physically expanding your nervous system's capacity. You are widening what neuroscientists call your window of tolerance. Your brain, your primal limbic system, learns a new, profound, and life-altering lesson. I will not die just because I feel something unpleasant. And that is the moment you become truly capable, not because you suddenly gain some new external knowledge, but because you finally, courageously accessed a capacity that was always there. A capacity that was previously blocked only by your lack of persistence. No one is born with grit. It is a reflex you must build, just like a muscle. The more resistance you learn to tolerate, the more power you ultimately gain. On day one, you may only manage 5 minutes of true, focused, uncomfortable effort. The next week, perhaps 15. A month later, you may find you can work in a state of deep, productive focus for 2 hours without breaking. Not because you suddenly became more talented, but because you retrained your nervous system to adapt and strengthen under pressure. You had this capacity as a child. when you were learning to walk, to speak, to write. None of it was easy. You fell hundreds of times. You babbled incoherently for months. You failed constantly. But you did not quit. No one told you that you lacked the talent for walking. You simply endured the falls, the failures, the confusion, long enough to gain the skill. But as you grew up, you forgot this power. You learned the destructive lie of talent. You began to believe that if something is hard, it must not be meant for you. But the truth is, if it is hard, if it is uncomfortable, it is exactly the thing that is worth training your reflex to endure. The winners in this life are not those who started out better. They are simply the ones who kept going longer. You do not have to win every single day. You just have to stop turning one hard, uncomfortable day into a permanent excuse for a total retreat. Maturity does not begin when you reach a certain biological age. It does not start when you finally land a stable job, carry a prestigious title, or begin to receive the admiration of others. True maturity, the kind that forges a soul, builds an empire, and creates a life of meaning, begins in one singular, often terrifying and solitary moment. The moment you stop blaming, stop running, and dare to take full, 100% radical responsibility for your life. No half measures, no clever excuses, no sophisticated detours around the truth. Just you, standing before the raw facts of your existence, making the sovereign decision to stop living as a victim. How many times, if you are truly honest, have you told yourself, I am like this because of them? I was not given the same opportunities, or I have been hurt so deeply in the past that I simply cannot change. You must understand, with a clarity that burns, those are not objective truths. They are sophisticated excuses. They are well-crafted, logical, and emotionally satisfying stories you have repeated so often, perhaps for decades, that your own brain now tragically believes they are facts. But in reality, they are just a shield you desperately hold up to avoid the terrifying, awesome, and profound responsibility of your own freedom to change. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre had a name for this: bad faith. It is the act of lying to oneself, of hiding the terrible truth of our own freedom and total responsibility behind a facade of reasonable excuses, pretending we are a thing, an object defined by our past, rather than a conscious creator defined by our choices. You say, no one understands me, but have you ever truly, without defense, tried to understand yourself? You wait for the world to change. You wait for the market to improve, for the geopolitical climate to stabilize, for your boss to become kinder. But have you ever, with true commitment, taken the initiative to fundamentally transform your inner world? This is the ultimate dividing line between the amateur and the professional, the lifelong employee in mindset and the true founder. The amateur, the victim, blames the market for their failure. The founder, the creator, understands that the market is never wrong. It just is. The founder knows, deep in their bones, that they are 100% responsible for their failure to understand that market, to adapt to it, to pivot their strategy, or to create something the market truly values. Maturity does not come from the comfort of a stable environment. It comes from being pushed to your absolute limits, from seeing your first venture fail, your funding dry up, and instead of shrinking into blame, you choose to own even the imperfect, broken, and failed parts of yourself. You must stop asking the powerless, childish question, why is this happening to me? And start asking the creator's question, what is this situation here to teach me? What can I learn from this? You stop focusing with obsessive, draining energy on who is right or who is wrong, and you begin asking the only questions that matter. Am I living in accordance with my principles? Am I doing what needs to be done, regardless of how I temporarily feel? Mature people, the ones who build things that last, do not live by the fluctuating, unreliable currency of their daily emotions. They live by the unwavering gold standard of their chosen principles. They still get hurt. They still get tired. They still question themselves sometimes. But they do not, under any circumstances, use those moments of internal, emotional turbulence as a valid excuse to quit, to break a promise, or to lower their standards. They understand, fundamentally, that a feeling is not a fact, and it is certainly not a directive. They internalize their own risk. In economic terms, they eliminate all moral hazard from their lives. A moral hazard is the lack of incentive to guard against risk when one is protected from its consequences. The mature individual understands that in the economy of their own soul, no one is coming to bail them out of their bad decisions. They are the sole insurer of their own life. And this profound, sobering realization forces a higher, more demanding standard of behavior. Real freedom, you see, is not what children believe it to be. The anarchic, impulsive ability to do whatever you want, whenever you want. That is merely slavery to your own lowest impulses. True, adult freedom is the difficult, often heavy capacity to own the consequences of all that you have done and all that you have failed to do. It is a freedom built not on reckless license, but on the unshakable bedrock of ownership, of awareness, and of profound inner strength. No one in this world owes you healing. No one is obligated to fix your past mistakes. No one has to understand you, love you, or wait patiently until you finally feel ready. Life does not wait. Success does not wait. Clarity does not wait. There is only you in this present moment, either stepping fully into the light and the weight of your own responsibility, or continuing to drift, pathetically, in the comfortable, shadowy illusion that you were just unlucky. You can begin this profound shift in the smallest, most mundane way. Each day, choose just one thing, one task you have been putting off and complete it, not because you suddenly feel motivated, but simply because you have decided, as an act of principle, that you are now a person who honors your commitments. Write down one past mistake, and instead of the long, elaborate story justifying it, just ask, what was my specific, active role in creating this outcome? Think of someone who hurt you, and instead of dwelling on the injustice, ask the more powerful question, how did my own lack of boundaries or my own choices allow this to happen? These small, often painful acts of radical self-inquiry are the fertile soil where true responsibility finally takes root, and where real, unshakable maturity begins to grow. The mature are not perfect, but they have embraced their imperfections as part of the data required for the process. They rise after setbacks without needing anyone else's hand to pull them up. They learn from their pain instead of burying it under excuses. They keep their promises to themselves, even and especially when no one on earth is watching. You can continue living the same old way, manufacturing new, sophisticated excuses, waiting for the perfect moment that will never come, blaming the unchangeable past. But you will remain stuck, a prisoner, in the decaying shadow of your former self, a fearful, passive, reactive version of the person you could have been. Or you can begin today, right now. Choose one task and see it through. Choose one mistake and own it completely. Choose one promise to yourself and keep it, no matter how you feel. And if you do this, day after day, no one will ever need to call you mature. You will know it, because you will no longer need to hide, you will no longer need to excuse, and you will no longer need someone else to show you the way. You are responsible for you. And from that single, powerful, liberating moment of total acceptance, every old limitation, every chain to your past, begins to crack and fall away. Motivation does not fall from the sky. It is not a miracle that arrives on a beautiful, sunlit morning, nor is it a magical wave of inspiration that suddenly and effortlessly wakes you from your inertia. Motivation is not something you passively wait for. It is the result of a process, a chemical and psychological reward. And if you are still living your life hoping that one day you will simply feel inspired enough to start, you are, in effect, gambling your entire future on a dangerous illusion. The harsh, cold, operational reality is that this magical feeling of inspiration is not coming. Not today, not next week, and not next year, unless you finally, decisively, act first. Most people live their entire lives in a permanent, passive state of waiting. Waiting for inspiration, waiting for the perfect timing, waiting for their mood to mysteriously settle, waiting for all the lights of life to align perfectly in their favor. But life, and indeed the entire economic and physical universe, does not operate on the volatile, unreliable currency of your fleeting emotions. It responds only to the hard, tangible currency of your actions, regardless of how you feel. This truth, though often difficult for the weaker version of you to accept, is the absolute, unshakable foundation of all transformation. Winners are not the ones who always feel motivated. They are simply the ones who have trained themselves to act without it. This is the great, defining secret of all successful creators, innovators, and entrepreneurs. Motivation, that glorious feeling of flow and purpose, almost always comes after the action, not before it. In the startup world, we have a name for this: shipping. The unsuccessful founder, the wantrepreneur, waits for the perfect divine inspiration to build the perfect, flawless product. They wait months, sometimes years, perfecting their idea in a vacuum. The successful founder, the true entrepreneur, acts. They build a small, imperfect, messy version, a minimum viable product, and they ship it into the world, often feeling terrified, uncertain, and completely uninspired. But in that single, courageous act of shipping, of taking action, everything changes. They get real-world data. They get customer feedback. They generate momentum. And that momentum, that tangible, energetic interaction with reality, is what finally ignites the true, sustainable, and powerful fire of real motivation. When you start, even quietly, even imperfectly, even when you feel completely unprepared, you generate that first spark of momentum. Momentum, in turn, creates energy. That sustained energy, that feeling of progress, is what finally triggers your brain's ancient reward system. A small, precious chemical release of dopamine that says, "That was productive. Do it again." And it is from that neurological satisfaction, that earned reward, that the genuine feeling of, "I want to do more," finally, blessedly arises. But if you sit still, passively waiting for that feeling to arrive first as a prerequisite, you will drown, slowly and comfortably, in the quicksand of your own delay. People want to write a book, but they wait for the muse of inspiration. They want to get in shape, but they wait for a jolt of excitement. They want to learn a new, valuable skill, but they wait for the perfect, uninterrupted block of free time and the ideal, focused mood. And what is the inevitable result? They never start. Or they start, fueled by a brief, manic, unreliable burst of inspiration. And then they quit. Inevitably, the moment that fragile feeling fades. Because inspiration, as a primary asset, is like the wind. It comes and goes, and you cannot build a life, a career, or a company on something so fundamentally fragile. You are, in effect, gambling your entire life's portfolio on the most volatile, unpredictable asset in the world. The truly successful, the mature, the exceptional. They do not live in this chaotic, high-risk economy of emotion. They live in the economy of principle. They build systems of action, daily rituals, that do not rely on or even require their emotional buy-in. They do not wake up and ask their feelings for permission to work. They do not ask their current mood, "Do I feel like doing this today?" They ask their commitment, their schedule, their system. Have I committed to doing this? True, sustainable freedom, the kind that builds empires and forges character, does not come from the childish, fleeting luxury of only doing what you feel like. It comes from the profound, adult ability to do what you have committed to do, even and especially when you do not feel like it in the slightest, because it is precisely in those moments, the moments of resistance, the moments where you act without emotional fuel, that you are truly, profoundly rebuilding your strength. You are sending a new, powerful, non-negotiable command to your subconscious. I do not wait for motivation. I am the motivation. I generate the results. And the motivation, like a loyal but secondary servant, follows. And here is the beautiful, quiet part. It always does, not in a sudden burst of fireworks, but in the steady, accumulating, deep satisfaction you feel at the end of the day. When you realize, with a quiet, unshakable pride, that you kept a promise to yourself that no one else on earth even knew you had made. Think back to the last time you did something truly hard when you didn't want to. When you dragged yourself to the gym feeling tired and depleted, but left an hour later feeling alive, clear-headed, and filled with more energy. When you opened your laptop in a complete mental fog, forced yourself to write just one single paragraph, and ended up writing for 2 hours, lost in a state of productive flow. Those moments are your personal proof. Action is the origin, not the consequence. The weak, the amateur, the child lives by their fleeting emotions. The mature, the professional, the creator lives by their chosen principles. And the exceptional? They turn that principle into a non-negotiable, automatic, daily system of action. When your schedule dictates that you write at 7 a.m., you do not debate with yourself. You just write. When your system says your training time is 5 p.m., you do not ask your feelings for their opinion. You just show up. It is this boring, unsexy, relentless consistency that builds true, unshakable power, not those rare, unreliable, fleeting waves of inspiration. You do not need to start by building 10 new, complex systems. Start with one small, non-negotiable act, and do it, especially when you do not want to. Write one single paragraph. Walk for 10 minutes. Read 5 pages of a difficult book. It does not matter how big or small the act itself is. What matters is that you are training your nervous system to act without emotional permission. And each and every time you do that, you are killing off a small piece of the old, weak version of you. The version that always needed to feel good before it would condescend to do good work. No one is coming to push you every day. No single video, not even this one, will inspire you forever. Not even the person you admire most in this world can act in your place. It is just you, your inner commitment, your steady self-command, and the discipline you choose to build, day by day. This is why truly successful people often seem boring from the outside. They are not chasing the next high of novelty. They are repeating the fundamentals relentlessly, without waiting for passion. If today you feel lazy, act for 5 minutes anyway. If you feel discouraged, take one small, concrete step forward. If your life feels chaotic, clean one single drawer. Do not act because you feel inspired. Act because you know, with a deep philosophical certainty, that you are rebuilding the very structure of your life. Every small, disciplined act is another brick. And you are today laying the foundation for a new version of you. A version no longer at the mercy of your emotional waves. A version that creates motivation rather than waiting for it. Comfort never shouts to warn you. It does not threaten. It does not command. It does not raise its voice. It only whispers. It whispers softly, reasonably, persuasively, just enough to make you postpone the most important, meaningful dreams of your life. Comfort is the silent killer of discipline. Philosophically, it is the ultimate entropic force, the natural tendency of all systems, including the complex system of your life, to move from a state of high energy order toward a state of low energy, high disorder chaos. Discipline is the conscious, anti-entropic application of energy required to build and maintain order, to create growth. Comfort, therefore, is the invisible assassin of that creative, structuring energy. It erodes your resolve gradually, a quiet, pervasive rust, until one day you wake up and no longer even recognize how much of your essential inner strength you have lost. It does not arrive dramatically. It seduces you into sleeping just 10 minutes longer, justifying it with the logic of rest. It tells you it is perfectly acceptable to skip today's workout just this once. It reassures you, with a comforting pat on the head, that there is still plenty of time, that you have earned a break, and you agree just once. Then you agree twice, and before long, with a terrifying speed, you have lost the very resilience, the very grit that you once fought so hard to build. You must, as a primary act of self-preservation, learn to distinguish with the clarity of a surgeon between true, necessary recovery and this destructive, indulgent comfort. Recovery is an intentional, strategic, and vital component of any high-performance system. Elite athletes, successful founders of billion-dollar startups, and top-tier professionals schedule their recovery with the same seriousness as their work. It is structured, it is purposeful, and it is designed specifically to regenerate energy for the next inevitable phase of intense, focused effort. Comfort, in stark contrast, is an unchecked retreat. It is choosing stillness not for purposeful regeneration, but for subconscious avoidance. It is choosing to stay still precisely when your soul knows you should be moving. Recovery lifts you, making you stronger for tomorrow. Comfort, in its seductive softness, quietly, methodically, drags you down. Your discipline, if it is not meticulously reinforced by daily, conscious action, is not destroyed by a single, grand catastrophe. It is undone, thread by thread, by the subtle, reasonable, and consistent application of ease. The real profound danger of comfort is not, in fact, in how it feels. It is in the brilliant, sophisticated logic it produces. It is a master rationalizer. It is the whispering voice of your own cognitive biases, the part of you that values immediate gratification and will invent any story to get it. It convinces you that in choosing comfort, you are merely being wise, balanced, or practicing self-love. But in reality, you are actively, systematically training your own brain through these repeated daily choices to believe that it is acceptable, even preferable, to quit the very moment things feel difficult. This is the very definition of programming yourself for a low-growth, mediocre life. And once that specific toxic message, discomfort equals retreat, is repeated often enough, you literally lose the neural muscle, the psychological fortitude, the simple, rugged capacity required to show up when life truly demands your strength. Comfort will not knock you out all at once with a single dramatic blow. It is far too clever for that. It gently, lovingly rocks you into a quiet, spiritual sleep, a warm, gray, comfortable fog where everything seems fine. Yet, critically, nothing within you truly grows. And the discipline that once gave you your freedom, your edge, your power, slowly, almost imperceptibly, dissolves as and disappears. Let me tell you something with absolute clarity. The great ones, the founders who build empires from nothing, the philosophers who change human thought, the creators who shape culture, they do not always enjoy being disciplined. They get tired, just like you. They feel the powerful gravitational pull of laziness, just like you. They too want to give in to the seductive call of ease. But they understand, on a deep, cellular, non-negotiable level, that comfort is not a reward. It is a trap. And so they build their lives to run not on the volatile, unreliable, fluctuating currency of their daily mood, but on the cold, hard, unshakable steel of their systems. They do not wait for the feeling of ease before they act. They act fully, consistently, even when it is hard, even when it is draining, even when it is mind-numbingly dull, because they know, fundamentally, that discipline is not just a tool for getting external results. It is the very pillar that uphops and defines their identity as a creator rather than a victim. Have you ever wondered why breaking those small, daily promises to yourself so devastatingly erodes your confidence? It is because each time you give in to that seductive whisper of comfort, you are casting a silent, internal, and definitive vote. You are telling your subconscious mind, the part of me that feels good right now is stronger and more important than the part of me that is committed to my future. And if you say that through your actions enough times, you start to believe, on a foundational, cellular level, that you truly do not have what it takes to do hard things. Discipline does not just help you finish your tasks. It is the sacred, daily mechanism by which you rebuild trust in your own word. And when comfort systematically kills your discipline, it simultaneously, inevitably, assassinates that inner trust. Do not think you need to eliminate all comfort from your life. That is an asceticism that is just as unsustainable. You just need to distinguish, with the clarity of a seasoned economist, between healthy, productive comfort, which is an earned return on your investment of effort, and destructive, corrosive indulgence, which is a default state of low-yield, high-cost living. When you set a fixed work schedule and stick to it, even when you are not inspired, you are prioritizing discipline. When you decide to turn off your phone for 3 hours to engage in the deep, uncomfortable, focused work that truly moves the needle, you are actively expanding your discipline zone. When you keep writing without inspiration, keep studying through the mental fog, keep your commitments in the silent darkness when no one is watching, you are actively retraining your brain to act independently of how it feels. Comfort only has true, nourishing value when it is earned through genuine, preceding effort. If it becomes your default, if it is simply how you live each day without challenge or friction, it becomes a sedative, an opiate, that slowly, surely kills all evolution. You do not need to live an aesthetic, joyless life, but you must learn to live by principles. Not everything that feels good in the moment is true self-love. Sometimes, true, profound self-love is forcing yourself to do the difficult, uncomfortable thing, precisely because you deserve to meet the strongest, most capable, and most resilient version of yourself. If you feel stuck, if you are constantly procrastinating, if you feel yourself falling behind without knowing why, look closely. With unflinching honesty, what specific comfort have you allowed to disguise itself as a reasonable, logical excuse? How often, and in what specific ways, have you let it infiltrate and corrupt your behavioral system? Starting today, right now, begin your quiet, internal resistance against the tyranny of ease. Choose one small act of deliberate, productive discomfort. It does not need to be huge. It just needs to be deliberate. Do not stay in bed for those extra 15 minutes. Do not check your phone as the first act of your day. Do not avoid the one important, high-leverage task that truly matters. Do not let the easy justification, "I deserve a rest," become your go-to excuse for abandoning your own responsibility to yourself. Every single time you consciously, deliberately override the primal, seductive urge for comfort, you reclaim a small piece of your sovereignty, your command over your own discipline. The weak ego, the small self, always wants to be pampered by ease. The strong, centered self, the creator's soul, knows, without a shred of doubt, that it is only by consciously and consistently moving beyond that comfort that you can ever hope to reach a state of true greatness. And your discipline, that daily, conscious choice, is the fire that keeps that strong identity alive. Sharp, focused, and perpetually moving forward, you will not always feel like doing the right thing. This is a fundamental, non-negotiable truth of the human condition. And to pretend otherwise is to set yourself up for a lifetime of failure. There will be mornings, perhaps most mornings, when you wake up with a mind that feels foggy and thick, and a heart that feels heavy, burdened by the unresolved weight of yesterday. There will be days when your emotions, those wild and untamed horses, pull you in the exact opposite direction of your stated, rational goals. You will know, with an unshakable logical clarity, exactly what needs to be done. You will see the task sitting there, waiting. And yet, in that very moment, a quiet, insidious rebellion will stir inside you. A soft, reasonable, and deeply familiar voice will begin its seductive whisper. Today is just not the best day. You are not at 100%. Tomorrow, when you are fresh, will be fine. Or worse, it will devalue the goal itself. This isn't even that important in the grand scheme of things. And if you listen to those voices, if you grant them even a moment of legitimacy, if you choose to compromise just this once, you have begun the process of capitulating to the most dangerous enemy of all, the silent, invisible surrender of your own will. Right action, the kind that builds empires, forges character, and creates a life of meaning, does not and cannot require your emotional agreement. That right there is the essential, defining difference between those who live by unwavering commitment and those who live at the whim of fleeting inspiration. Your emotions shift by the minute, volatile and unpredictable as a chaotic market. But the consequences, the results of one wrong choice, one single act of surrender made under the temporary influence of the wrong emotion, can last for months, for years, even for a lifetime. The mature individual, the true creator, the founder of their own destiny, does not make critical decisions based on these fleeting feelings. They have learned to make them based on their chosen principles and their assessment of long-term value. And to do that, you must cultivate the courage to act against what your emotions are telling you in the moment. Imagine this, for it is the daily battleground where your future is won or lost. You have planned your morning, your ideal routine, with clarity and commitment. Wake at 5:30 a.m., write for 90 minutes on your crucial project, exercise for 30 minutes. But when the alarm, that shrill and merciless signal from the world of your own intentions, rings in the dark, your entire body feels like it is filled with lead. Your mind, instantly alert to this weakness, immediately offers a perfectly curated buffet of justifications. You worked so hard yesterday, you genuinely need the extra sleep to recover. There is no urgent, external deadline today. No one will know. It is better to rest fully and do high-quality work tomorrow than to do mediocre work today. This is the moment of truth. If you say yes to that voice, if you hit the snooze button, you think you are taking one small, harmless step back, an act of self-compassion. But you are not. You are, in that instant, actively creating and reinforcing a devastating neurological system. You are teaching your own subconscious mind that your powerful transient emotions are an acceptable, valid override for your stated, long-term discipline. You are handing the keys of your kingdom over to the most unstable part of yourself. Now, imagine the alternative. You get up. Your body is heavy. Your mind is unmotivated. You feel completely unready. But you still open the laptop and write. You still put on your shoes and walk. You do it, not from a place of inspiration, but from a place of cold, hard, unshakable identity. You do it because you said you would, and in doing that single, difficult act, you send a signal of immense power to your subconscious, a new command that overwrites the old, weak code. I am the one who acts, even when I do not feel like it. Repeat that single act enough times, and it ceases to be an act. It becomes a new core identity. You are no longer someone who struggles with hesitation. You are no longer someone who depends on the fragile crutch of your daily mood. You have become someone who leads themselves. This is the alchemical secret of all true growth. Inner strength is not forged on the days when everything flows, when you feel inspired, and when the world is applauding you. That is not strength. That is merely performance. True, unshakable inner strength is forged only in these exact, mundane, unglamorous moments. The moments when you want to stop, but you continue anyway. The moments you do the right thing precisely because of and amidst your own internal resistance. In that moment of friction, you do not just alter your outcome for the day. You fundamentally elevate your entire identity. It is identity, not just a list of results, that will ultimately carry you through a lifetime of inevitable adversity. This requires you to be ruthlessly honest with yourself. You can justify your procrastination with 1,000 clever, sophisticated reasons. You can convince yourself and others that your avoidance of the difficult task today is a necessary act of self-care. But in your heart of hearts, you know the difference. You know, with a clarity that cannot be faked, the qualitative difference between genuine, strategic recovery, which is an investment in your future performance, and simple, cowardly indulgence, which is just an avoidance of the present. What sets you apart, what defines your character, is whether you possess the courage to act without the need for external motivation, without the validation of applause, and despite the loud, screaming protests of your own doubt. Ordinary people, the masses, act only when conditions are ideal and their feelings are aligned. Exceptional people, the architects of their own lives, act despite all emotional resistance. They have learned that emotion is not truth. Emotion is just data. It is temporary, physiological weather, shifting like the wind. Your action, your commitment, your principle, that is what defines your outcome. And your repeated action in alignment with your principles is what defines your destiny. If this distinction between acting on commitment versus acting on emotion has provided you with a new sense of clarity or strength, consider sharing this video with a relative or loved one. It might be the very message they need to hear to help them push through their own wall of resistance and reclaim their power. Weak, self-sabotaging thoughts do not come charging at you from the outside world, announced with trumpets and declarations of war. They begin, always, inside your own mind, quietly, subtly, in moments that seem utterly harmless. They are born in the small, almost imperceptible pause when you hesitate for just a minute. They gain power in the moment you give yourself permission to reconsider a decision you have already made. They plant their roots in the seemingly innocent, microscopic thought that slips into your mind. Maybe I don't need to try quite so hard today. These thoughts do not shout their destructive intent. They whisper like a reasonable, comforting friend. But if you do not recognize them for the poison they are, if you do not extinguish them at this fragile seed level, they will not remain small. They will grow. They will metastasize silently into an entire system of logic, a sophisticated, internally consistent argument that brilliantly convinces you that giving up is, in fact, the most reasonable and intelligent choice. This is the insidious process by which procrastination is rationalized into wisdom, and how the cowardly habit of surrender is skillfully disguised as self-compassion. And in the very moment you finally allow that toxic thought to live, in the moment you accept its logic, you have already punched a critical, gaping hole in the very fortress of your own inner power. Strong people, the creators, the founders, the leaders, are not superhuman beings who are somehow void of these weak thoughts. They experience them just as you do. The critical difference is that they have become masterful, ruthless auditors of their own minds. They are skilled at spotting these internal saboteurs the very instant they arise, and they have trained an automatic, non-negotiable reflex to shut them down without mercy, without a moment's hesitation. When you, on the other hand, catch yourself thinking, I guess I don't need to work out today, you likely begin a debate. You negotiate with the thought, well, I am pretty tired, but I did promise myself. But one day won't hurt. And in that very negotiation, you have already lost. The moment you engage a weak thought in a debate, you have given it legitimacy. You have granted it standing. You have stepped down from the throne of the commander and onto the muddy floor of the debating chamber with a traitor. And every single negotiation with a weak thought inevitably ends in one place. A compromise that shrinks your potential, a quiet surrender that chips away at your self-respect. Mental toughness, true resilience, is not about the naive ability to think positively all day long. It is about the disciplined, warrior-like ability to cut off the self-destructive, paralyzing thought patterns at their source. The very moment they are detected. Look back at the times you lost your rhythm of discipline, the moments your progress stalled, and you fell back into old patterns. It rarely, if ever, started with a single, grand, catastrophic mistake. It started, did it not, with one small, unchallenged thought? Just this once. I'll do it tomorrow. But that once became twice, then 3 times, and then Before you knew it, it had become your new, deeply ingrained habit. You found yourself right back at square one, only now carrying the new, heavy, additional weight of profound disappointment in yourself. There is no external enemy more effective at defeating you than the single toxic thought you allowed to remain unchallenged for too long. In the world of startups, this is the equivalent of ignoring a small, harmless bug in the code. That one bug, left unaddressed, does not remain small. It creates cascading errors, it corrupts data, it leads to system-wide failures, and it can, in the end, destroy the entire company. Your mind is your operating system, and a weak thought is a bug that must be patched immediately. When you decide to change, you are not just facing your external habits. You are confronting a sophisticated mental operating system that has been programmed for years to protect your comfort zone. And this system is clever. It disguises these weak, entropic thoughts as higher logic, as profound kindness, as a new, enlightened sense of life balance. But if you are not ruthlessly sharp, you will tragically mistake this new, sophisticated fragility for a form of maturity. You will start to believe that quitting is a sign of wisdom, when in fact, it is just the mark of someone who is no longer willing to be brave. So, how do you distinguish between a genuine, rational warning and a weak, sabotaging thought? The test is simple and absolute. A rational, strategic warning always makes you confront reality more deeply and urges you toward better, smarter action. It says, "This specific strategy is flawed. Pivot your approach based on this new data." A weak thought, on the other hand, always makes you want to avoid reality and urges you toward less action or no action at all. It whispers, "This is just too hard. Let's delay, let's stop, let's find an easier path." Let the outcome of the thought be your metric. Anything that leads to a reduction in your disciplined action, no matter how poetic or reasonable it sounds, must be treated as sabotage. Your mind, remember, is never neutral. In every single moment, it is either serving you or it is sabotaging you. And you are the one training it, day by day, through your immediate responses to every single thought that arises. If you consistently let weak thinking stay, if you tolerate it, debate it, and ultimately obey it, you are actively teaching your brain that this pattern is acceptable. And your loyal brain, in its efficiency, will simply repeat that program with greater ease. But if you sever that thought, instantly, cleanly, the moment it appears, you are rewriting the entire operating system. You are declaring a new law. Only thoughts that are aligned with my mission, with my core principles, are allowed to remain. True, profound freedom does not come from someday achieving a state where you are magically free of all negative or weak thoughts. It comes from the daily, moment-to-moment practice of never, ever being ruled by them. You will never eliminate the insidious whispers of doubt, the seductive pull of comfort, or the nagging voice of frustration. But you can become someone who never, ever again lets those transient voices rewrite your ultimate, chosen destiny. And you do that. You build that power every single time you recognize a thought that weakens you and you extinguish it without negotiation, the very moment it begins. What you intentionally avoid does not simply disappear. It does not vanish just because you refuse to look at it. It merely retreats. It retreats into the background of your mind, into the deep, shadowed cellars of your subconscious, where it waits patiently for a moment of your weakness, a crack in your armor, to seize control. The fear you refuse to name, the painful memory you actively bury under layers of distraction, the difficult truth you pretend to forget. All of it lives on, deep within the shadows, operating silently, powerfully, like a hidden operating system, a piece of malicious code running in the background of your life. This is the shadow debt of the soul. And like any unacknowledged financial debt, it compounds silently in the dark. You think you are getting away with not paying it, but the interest is accumulating every single day, manifesting as that unexplained anxiety, that chronic low-grade fatigue, that feeling of being inexplicably exhausted despite doing nothing truly heavy. Then one day, you suddenly, violently overreact to a small, insignificant piece of feedback. You find yourself keep dodging the most important, high-impact tasks on your to-do list. The answer is simple. Everything you are trying so desperately to avoid is quietly, methodically, and effectively running the show. It is not the external events of your life that are truly draining you. It is the profound, exhausting, internal war between the part of you that knows, with an unshakable certainty, what you must face, and the other, weaker part of you that is engaged in the endless, costly campaign of delay. Avoidance is a sweet, seductive anesthetic. It offers a fleeting, temporary peace, the immediate relief of not having to deal with the difficult thing right now. But the price you pay for this temporary numbness is catastrophic. You trade your inner freedom, your personal power, your very sovereignty, for that fleeting moment of comfort. This is the ultimate act of what the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre called bad faith. You are actively lying to yourself to escape the terrifying, awesome responsibility of your own freedom to choose, to act, to change. Every time you turn away, every time you choose the anesthetic of distraction over the sharp, clarifying pain of facing something true, you are taking out another high-interest loan against your own future. And that fake peace, that borrowed comfort, poisons your spirit daily, slowly but surely turning you into someone who reacts only from a place of fear rather than living from a place of principle. We do not avoid things because we are inherently weak. We avoid them because our primitive nervous system, our ancient survival brain, has been conditioned to learn that facing certain kinds of pain means mortal danger. The primal pain of remembering, the ego-shattering pain of admitting unequivocally, I was wrong. The terrifying adult pain of taking full, radical responsibility instead of casting blame on others or on circumstances. But here is the non-negotiable law of all growth, spiritual, personal, and economic. No one, not ever, truly grows, truly evolves, without courageously walking through that very fire of discomfort. You can delay it. You can postpone it for years, even decades. But the longer you delay, the deeper the roots of the problem grow, the more control you lose, and the higher the compound interest becomes. This is the technical debt of a startup. The founders know there is a deep, fundamental flaw in their core code, in their business model. But facing it now is too painful. It would require a difficult, costly pivot, perhaps admitting failure to their investors. So they avoid it, they bury it, choosing instead to focus on easy, superficial features, on vanity metrics, on busy work that feels productive but isn't meaningful. They fill their days with easy tasks to escape the one truly meaningful, high-stakes task, confronting the core problem. They think they are in control because they are busy. But the truth is, they are being manipulated, their company's fate sealed by the very unresolved problem, the hidden fear they refuse to name. You are no different. You are being manipulated by your own unresolved memories, your hidden fears, your personal portfolio of unfinished emotional business. You must examine your own habits of avoidance. You keep yourself compulsively busy, so you will not have a single quiet moment to face the stark reality of your life. You invent 1,000 reasonable excuses for not starting that one crucial, difficult conversation, the one you know needs to happen. You call this avoidance. I need more time, or I'm just waiting for the right moment, or the most seductive and noble-sounding lie of all, I don't want to hurt anyone. But deep down, in the one place where you cannot lie to yourself, you know the truth. You are afraid. You are afraid to confront the cold, hard facts. You are afraid to fundamentally change. You are afraid to step into the terrifying, liberating void of uncertainty. It is not your external circumstances. It is your fear that is keeping you perpetually stuck. The only way to reclaim your control, to reclaim your power, to stop the compound interest of your shadow debt from bankrupting your soul, is to stop running. Step 1 is not to magically conquer the fear. That is too big a leap. Step 1 is simply to name it, to face it, to drag it out of the shadow and into the light, to write it down, to look directly without flinching at the specific thing you have been avoiding, the unhealed wound, the postponed responsibility, the dreaded conversation, the decision you know you must make, but continue to delay. Each time you do this, each time you drag one of these ghosts into the light of your conscious awareness, you reclaim a critical piece of your lost power, your lost energy, and eventually, you will come to the profound realization that it was never the pain itself that was truly so scary. It was the long-held, unexamined illusion that you somehow couldn't handle it. What is most dangerous to your soul is not the negative emotion itself. It is the systematic, chronic denial of it. When you ignore your deeper, truer feelings, you do not eliminate them. You just make them more ambiguous, more potent, and harder to manage, until they inevitably erupt sideways at the worst possible moments. An irrational surge of anger at a loved one, a sudden, inexplicable physical breakdown, a deep depression with no clear, apparent cause. It is not the emotion that weakens you. It is your profound, chronic refusal to understand, to name, and to actively process it. True freedom does not come from successfully avoiding everything that hurts. Freedom comes only from looking straight at it, without flinching and knowing deep in your bones that you have the capacity to walk through it. And that, like any great skill, takes training. It takes practice. It takes naming the emotion instead of just reflexively saying, "I'm fine." It takes observing the fear as it rises in your body, instead of instantly, unconsciously reacting to it. It takes sitting with the pain for a moment, instead of immediately silencing it with the cheap anesthetic of your work, your phone, social media, or hollow humor. Each time you do this, you are no longer a prisoner of your own mind. You are becoming the one in charge. You cannot change what you will not face. You cannot heal what you have not first touched. And you cannot possibly grow if you keep building walls around the darkest, most wounded corners of your inner world. Maturity is not about denying your fragility. It is about walking through it with courage. Because on the other side of that wall of avoidance, there is, and always has been, a version of you that is stronger, clearer, and fundamentally, gloriously freer. If this exploration of avoidance, this call to face your truth, has felt valuable to you, perhaps it is a message someone in your life also needs to hear. Sharing this with a friend or relative is not just sharing a video. It is offering a path to freedom. A reminder that the only way out is through. Feeling stuck in your life. That profound, heavy, suffocating sensation of moving in slow motion while the world speeds past you, does not actually come from your external circumstances. It is not a reflection of your job, your finances, or your relationships. It is the direct, painful psychological consequence of a single, devastating internal fracture. The gap between what you know you need to do and what you are actually doing. You see the door. You know it leads to the life you want. But you will not walk through it. You know, with an almost agonizing clarity, what must change. But you continue to hesitate. And with each passing day, each week, each year that you allow this chasm between knowing and doing to widen, the heaviness builds. It is not the problem itself that is complex. It is your own chronic inaction that has made it so. Most of what truly drains your life force, your precious creative energy, your finite cognitive bandwidth, is not the actual workload required to build your dream. It is the crushing, compounding weight of the delay in making the necessary decisions. It is the psychic exhaustion of living perpetually in the hypothetical, of endlessly replaying the same looping thoughts. What if I fail? Should I start now? What if I am not ready? You become a startup founder trapped in analysis paralysis, spending months, even years, perfecting a business plan in a vacuum, terrified to launch a minimum viable product and face the raw, unfiltered feedback of the real world. You are stuck in the knowing phase, perpetually avoiding the doing phase where all true learning and value creation occurs. This stuckness is not a passive state. It is an active, energy-consuming process of self-sabotage. In economic terms, the cost of this inaction is not zero. It is the catastrophic, immeasurable opportunity cost of the person you are failing to become, the value you are failing to create, the market share you are ceding to competitors who are less talented but more daring, and the life you are simply failing to live. We have been tragically misled by the cultural myth of inspiration, the lie that we must first feel ready, feel motivated, feel a surge of divine inspiration before we can finally begin to act. But in the real, operational universe, this sequence is a falsehood. That magical feeling of readiness you are passively waiting for will never arrive. Inspiration, true and sustainable inspiration, is not the cause of action. It is the consequence of it. It is the chemical and emotional reward your brain grants you after you have overcome the initial, difficult barrier of inertia. In chemistry, a reaction requires a certain amount of activation energy to begin. In your life, that first, small, often uncomfortable action is your activation energy. When you take even the smallest, most seemingly insignificant action, you send a powerful signal to your nervous system. I am not frozen. In that instant, you generate the first crucial spark of momentum. And that momentum, that tangible interaction with reality, is what creates the positive energy, the feeling of being in control, from which more inspiration arises. You are stuck precisely because you are living day after day in that agonizing gap between knowing and doing. You have watched the videos, you have read the books, you have listened to the endless advice and podcasts. Your mind is full, perhaps even overflowing, with knowledge. And yet, you are still in the same place. Why? Because you have not consistently acted on even 1% of that knowledge. Knowledge in itself is merely potential energy. It transforms nothing. It is only knowledge combined with messy, imperfect, consistent execution that forms the bridge, the only bridge, between the abstract realm of your potential and the tangible realm of your reality. You do not need to do something grand or heroic today. You just need to break the stillness. One small, repeated action, one single line of code written, one single email sent, one single sales call made, creates infinitely more momentum than the most brilliant, grand, and perfect plan that remains forever locked in your notebook. Action is also the only known antidote to a decaying sense of self-trust. Every single time you follow through on a promise you made to yourself, no matter how small, you send a deep, healing, resonant signal to your subconscious. I keep my word. I am reliable. I am trustworthy. This is how you rebuild your identity from the ground up. Conversely, each time you delay, each time you break that internal promise, you encode a different, more toxic message. I am not strong enough. My words are meaningless. I cannot be trusted even by myself. This, my friend, is the real, hidden, spiritual cost of your stuckness. So stop right now, searching for the perfect solution or the perfect time. Stop waiting to feel ready. Do something now. Not because it will magically fix everything at once, but because it will, in this very instant, break your paralysis. Split that one enormous, terrifying task into 3 small, manageable ones. Set a timer for just 15 minutes and begin. Accept imperfection, but fiercely, relentlessly, protect the habit of consistency. Because repeated action is the only reliable therapy for a life that has been stuck for far too long. No one is coming to rescue you. No miracle will realign your life unless you take the first step. And there is no emotion in this world more empowering, more healing than the quiet, profound relief of looking back at the end of a long day and finally being able to say to yourself, I've begun. Not perfectly, not spectacularly, but honestly. And that simple, honest beginning is the start of everything you have been waiting to become. You are not lazy. You have simply become so profoundly familiar with a sluggish, low-energy rhythm of life that you have, tragically, mistaken that rhythm for who you fundamentally are. You are not, at your core, unmotivated. You have simply lived for too long in an environment, both internal and external, where every automatic, subconscious reflex leans toward delay, toward avoidance, and toward hesitation. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, day by day, you have started to accept the labels that this behavior implies. You have started identifying with the outcome of your own inaction, telling yourself, I'm just not a disciplined person. I'm clearly not good enough. I'm just one of those people who always gives up. But here is the profound, liberating truth you must grasp. No one, not ever, is born with a weak identity. That feeling of being a quitter or a procrastinator, is not a fixed destiny. It is a structure that is built day after day through the quiet accumulation of thousands of small, seemingly insignificant choices. It was built in all those tiny moments where you knew you should act. But you chose, for 1,000 reasonable-sounding justifications, not to. Every single time you chose to delay a necessary action, you were not just wasting time. You were actively rewriting your own internal definition of who you are. You were reinforcing a new, damaging inner image. I am someone who never starts. I am someone who always quits halfway. I am someone who lives perpetually in the gray, safe, agonizing space of the in-between. Nicark. And when that negative, limiting image is repeated long enough, consistently enough, it stops being a mere description of your temporary behavior, and it becomes your core, operational definition. You then, inevitably, begin to live up to what you believe you are. Not because it is the objective truth of your potential, but because your powerful, non-judgmental subconscious mind is wired, above all else, for one thing: internal consistency. It is a biological imperative, a form of cognitive consistency, that your subconscious must protect and validate your dominant, established identity, whether that identity is powerful or weak. This need for consistency cuts both ways, with the impartiality of a double-edged sword. It will help you uphold a new standard of discipline if you can successfully convince it that you are a responsible, disciplined person. But it will also, with equal ferocity, keep you stuck, trapped in a powerful loop of procrastination if your dominant, established identity is that of an inconsistent person. This is the most dangerous part. You do not even notice it happening. You simply, genuinely think, "This is just who I am." You believe you are not the strong type, not the entrepreneurial type. But what you do not realize is that none of it, not a single part of it, is fixed. It is just the cumulative, lagging outcome of behaviors that you yourself have repeated, unconsciously, for far too long. This is the crucial distinction, the one that can change everything for you. Identity is not something you discover, like finding a hidden object. It is something you build, like constructing a house. The bad news is, you have, up until this very moment, built your current identity largely unconsciously, by default, based on your reactions to your environment and your craving for comfort. But the good news, the glorious, life-altering news, is that you can rebuild it, consciously, starting right now. You do not need to wait to magically feel like a new person before you can start acting like one. In fact, that is the very illusion that keeps you trapped. It is the exact opposite. You must act like the person you want to become first, and your feelings, your identity, will eventually, inevitably, catch up. This is the profound truth behind the often misunderstood advice to fake it till you make it. It is not about being inauthentic or deceiving others. It is about acting as if. A process of providing your subconscious mind with new, undeniable behavioral evidence that contradicts the old, limiting program. Action precedes transformation. Every single time you behave differently, even by just 1%, every time you choose the disciplined action over the comfortable one, you are rewriting the very architecture of your internal identity. Stagnation, that feeling of being perpetually stuck, often grows from two toxic roots: a deep sense of learned helplessness and a resulting paralyzing fear of failure. Maybe you have tried before, perhaps with a great burst of initial enthusiasm. You sprinted, you gave it your all for a week or a month. And then, when the results did not come fast enough, or when the resistance became too great, you burned out and quit. And your subconscious mind, in its simplistic, survival-oriented way, learned a devastatingly wrong lesson from that experience. It learned, trying hard does not lead to reward. Trying hard leads to pain, exhaustion, and disappointment. Therefore, to protect the owner, do not try so hard again. This is the psychological mechanism of learned helplessness, and it is a prison built from your own past, unexamined conclusions. But here is what your subconscious did not realize, and what you must teach it now. It is not that you did not try hard enough. It is that your efforts were unsustainable. You sprinted on the volatile, high-interest loan energy of excitement, a surge of dopamine, and then, inevitably, you crashed. You quit. In the startup world, this is the founder who burns through all their seed capital in the first 6 months on flashy, non-essential perks and marketing, instead of practicing the disciplined, consistent, and boring work of building a sustainable, profitable business model. The most successful, enduring ventures and the most successful, enduring lives are not built on one single, heroic sprint. They are built on the quiet, unsexy, but massively powerful principle of compounding daily effort. Your old, weak identity is a high-churn customer of your own life force. The new identity you must build is a high-retention model, built on small, consistent daily deposits of disciplined action. You do not need to change your entire life overnight. You only need to take one small, concrete action that directly contradicts the limiting labels you have placed on yourself. If you have told yourself for years, "I am not a consistent person," then your mission, starting today, is to become relentlessly consistent with one small thing for just 7 days. Just one. Not everything. Just one. Pick one thing and prove your old story wrong. If you believe your identity is, "I always procrastinate," then set a timer for 10 minutes, just 10. And the very moment that familiar resistance, that heavy feeling of avoidance, shows up, you begin. Not to prove anything to the world, but to send a new, undeniable, revolutionary signal to your own subconscious. Attention, the old program is wrong. I am not who I used to be. I am now the one who acts. The hardest part of this entire process is not changing the behavior. It is your willingness to let go of the old, familiar, and strangely comforting story you have been telling yourself for so long. You have clung to it, perhaps, for comfort. It gave you a justification for your inaction. It gave you an escape from the terrifying weight of your own responsibility. But that story, that cozy blanket of excuses, is the very thing that is keeping you small, keeping you waiting, and keeping you trapped in the same tired, predictable results. So pause, ask yourself right now, what are you currently, actively believing about yourself that is keeping you stuck? That you lack discipline? That you do not have the right energy? That you are not talented enough? That you are fundamentally unworthy of change? That it is already too late for you? That you were somehow born a failure? Write it all down. See it for what it is. Then, underneath it, write this new declaration. This story is old. This story is expired. It is not me. I choose a new one, and I will build it with my actions, starting now. Do not wait to feel different to live differently. Choose to live differently, and the feelings will follow. You are not weak. You are just living in a loop built by your own unconscious, repeated choices. But every small action you take today, repeated with intention, repeated with consistency, begins to rewrite your core code. One step cannot break you out of the cocoon, but hundreds of intentional, disciplined, daily steps will open the doors to an entirely different identity, an entirely new life. Not through a single, sudden burst of effort, but through the quiet, magnificent, unstoppable power of the daily repetition of a better choice, over and over and over again, until that choice finally becomes who you are. You cannot serve both faith and fear. These two primordial and opposing forces cannot and will not share the same sovereign throne within the kingdom of your mind. One constantly whispers, with a quiet, generative conviction of possibility, "You can." The other, often far louder and more insistent, screams with the collective voice of your past failures and all of society's doubts, "Don't you dare try." And every single decision you make, every subtle emotional reaction you have, every single moment you either hesitate in paralysis or choose to move forward in courage, reveals with unflinching and absolute clarity, whom you are truly, operationally serving in that instant. Do not be mistaken into the comfortable but ultimately fatal delusion that you can somehow balance the two, keeping a little bit of faith for the good days and a little bit of fear tucked away as a backup plan for the bad ones. Your mind is not a modern democratic alliance, skillfully brokering compromises between opposing parties. It is an absolute kingdom, and in that kingdom, either faith rules with expansive clarity, or fear with its army of doubts manipulates and rules from the shadows. There exists no sustainable gray area, no comfortable neutrality in this fundamental existential choice. There is only one stark, non-negotiable question you must answer, not just once, but consciously, deliberately, every single day, perhaps every single hour. To whom will you submit your power today? Faith, by its very nature, does not need external proof before it agrees to begin. It operates from an inner knowing, a resonant certainty that transcends the need for immediate validation. Yet, paradoxically, it always, inevitably, leaves a trail of tangible evidence after you have had the courage to act upon it. Fear, conversely, demands every conceivable guarantee, every possible assurance, every meticulously calculated certainty before it will grant you permission to take even a single tentative step. It demands 5-year projections. It demands market validation. It demands the consensus of the crowd. Yet, tragically, it never produces anything of lasting value except the corrosive byproducts of delay, disappointment, and the slow, agonizing death of your untapped potential. This is the fundamental divide that separates the entrepreneur from the hesitant analyst, the creator from the critic. The entrepreneur, the one who builds a new reality, must, by definition, live by faith. They commit to a vision before the market data can possibly prove it viable. They build the product before the customers arrive. They take the asymmetric risk, understanding that the potential upside, creating a new category, solving an unsolved problem, changing the world, is worth the very real and logical possibility of failure. This is the very meaning of the word venture in venture capital. In stark contrast, the mind ruled by fear operates on a principle of pure, unadulterated risk aversion. It seeks only the mythological creature of guaranteed success, a principle that, in the chaotic, uncertain, and constantly evolving marketplace of life and economics, simply does not exist. The person waiting for a guarantee of success before they will finally act is the person who will, in effect, never act at all. One of the greatest and most tragic mistakes people make, the reason so many well-intentioned lives end in mediocrity, is thinking they can believe in a prosperous, expansive future, while simultaneously keeping fear as their primary, secret, realistic backup plan. They make bold plans during the day, but they carry the heavy, hidden anchor of doubt into the night. They speak optimistic, hopeful words to others, but in the silent, honest chambers of their own minds, they brace relentlessly, habitually, for the impact of failure. What they fail to realize, and what you must understand, is that the powerful, literal subconscious mind does not respond to what you merely hope will happen. It responds only and ever to the master you consistently, vibrationally serve. Every single time you choose to delay a necessary decision, not for strategic reasons, but out of a subtle, creeping fear, you are casting a decisive, energetic vote for fear as your ruler. Every time you remain silent when your inner truth demands that you speak up, you are implicitly letting fear lead your life. Every single time you know in your heart you should act, but you tell yourself you need to wait just a little longer, for a clearer sign, for a more perfect time, for just one more piece of validating data, You are actively in that moment, handing over your sovereign power, your creative potential, to the encroaching darkness of doubt. And the more you repeat these seemingly small, prudent actions of hesitation, the deeper you dig the neural pathways, the more you solidify a belief system where fear itself is the undisputed master. You create an internal operating system where every new idea, every creative spark, every potential leap must first be screened through the single, paralyzing, innovation-killing question: what is the absolute worst that could possibly happen if I fail? On the other hand, if you truly desire to live a life guided by faith, every single action you take must consciously affirm that choice, not just when you feel strong, confident, and inspired, but especially, crucially, when you are trembling in the dark. Not only when you can clearly see the light at the end of the tunnel, but particularly when you are still lost deep in the fog, with no map, no compass, and no external guide. Because faith, the kind that builds worlds, is not a fleeting, pleasant feeling. It is a rugged, unwavering, internal commitment. It is the conscious, often difficult choice to do what you know is right, even when it feels profoundly uneasy. It is the courage to take consistent, daily action on what you know you are called to do, even when absolutely no one in the external world is clapping for you or offering validation. And most importantly, as the great generals of history understood before a decisive battle, it is the willingness to metaphorically cut off your own return path, to burn the bridges leading back to your old, comfortable, predictable life of fear, to give yourself absolutely no excuse, no convenient loophole, no plan B that allows you to compromise your chosen direction. I have seen, with my own eyes, far too many people radiating with immense talent and brilliant potential live out their entire lives in a gray, muted, unexpressed state of mediocrity. Why? Simply because they let fear hold the key to their decisions. The fear of rejection, the fear of judgment, the paralyzing fear of failure. They lived by the seemingly safe, logical, and ultimately cowardly model. Only do something if success is absolutely guaranteed. And since nothing truly innovative, nothing truly meaningful, nothing truly transformative in this life is ever guaranteed, they ultimately never did anything that truly mattered. Meanwhile, those rare individuals who consciously choose to serve faith operate by an entirely different, more powerful creative model. They act first, often with incomplete information, trusting that the necessary resources and clarity will emerge as a result of their committed action, not as a prerequisite for it. They are not reckless. They are iterative. They are not blind perfectionists. They are resilient creators. They do not wait for ideal conditions to be handed to them. They understand that conditions become ideal precisely through their committed, faith-driven action. They walk with a quiet but steady internal force, an energy that simply says, I may not know exactly what will happen next or how this will all unfold, but I know with absolute certainty that I will not stay still. You cannot, I repeat, cannot truly step into the fullness of your calling, your venture, your life's great work, if you are still attempting to sublet a small, comfortable apartment in the back of your mind to your doubts and fears. Faith and fear cannot coexist as peaceful neighbors for long. They are opposing energetic frequencies. Eventually, inevitably, one must displace the other. The only question that truly matters is, are you finally ready to serve the eviction notice? Are you truly ready to invite fear, with all its logical arguments and prudent hesitations, out of the throne room of your mind permanently? Are you willing to begin living, truly living, as if you were born not merely to survive through quiet, cautious acceptance, but to lead, to create, to contribute, and to make your unique mark upon this world? Remember, you are actively teaching your subconscious mind every single day through your choices and actions, exactly how you want it to support you. If you consistently hesitate, procrastinate, and shrink back from challenges, your subconscious interprets that signal as the master does not truly want fundamental change. Maintain the current state of safety. But if you move, even while trembling, even while uncertain, it understands with equal clarity the new command. The master has chosen faith. All systems must now align to support this new, forward direction. There is nothing inherently wrong with still experiencing the emotion of fear. It is a natural, ancient human response. But the biggest, most tragic mistake you can ever make is allowing that feeling to consistently make the final decisions for you. Every single time you choose to retreat instead of advance, you lose a little bit more of your precious personal power, your internal sovereignty. And bit by bit, choice by choice, you risk losing your true identity altogether, becoming nothing more than a hollowed-out collection of conditioned, fearful reflexes. Do not let that happen. Examine your behaviors. Examine your recent decisions. Ask yourself, with ruthless, unflinching honesty, did this action, this word, this choice, come from a place of faith and expansion, or from a place of fear and contraction? If it came from fear, commit right now to changing it the very next time the choice arises. Do not wait for some grand, life-altering opportunity to finally prove your new allegiance to faith. Start by saying the small, courageous words you once kept silent. Start by acting decisively in the small moment where you once would have hesitated. And most importantly, keep going, relentlessly, even when no one believes in you. Because once you truly, consistently, and wholeheartedly choose to serve faith above all else, the external world, slowly but surely, will begin to reflect that profound internal choice. Not immediately, perhaps, but certainly. People will subconsciously sense the new energy, the new coherence emanating from you. Opportunities that were once invisible to you will begin to open as if by magic. And your powerful subconscious, your most loyal and tireless servant, will finally begin the deep, transformative work of restructuring every single one of your behavioral patterns to perfectly match the new, empowered identity you are finally, courageously choosing to live out. That transformation is the highest reward, and it is also the clearest, most undeniable proof that you simply cannot live fully in the light, while simultaneously, pragmatically keeping one foot firmly planted in the lingering, comfortable shadows of the past. The time has come to choose decisively. And if you are to serve only one master for the rest of your precious life, let it be faith. If this call to choose faith over fear resonates deeply within your own heart, if it feels like a truth you are ready to live, perhaps you could share this message with a relative or loved one. It might be the very catalyst they need to examine their own internal sovereign and to finally choose the path of courage for themselves. No power, the kind that truly sustains success and builds empires, can ever be held for long if your thoughts, your words, and your actions are not in profound and unwavering alignment. This is not a moral judgment. It is a law of energetic physics. Your subconscious mind, the vast and powerful engine that executes the commands of your life, does not respond to your beautiful, hollow words or your carefully crafted outward appearances. It only listens to and acts upon the total integrated signal you send. It listens to what you consistently repeat in the private theater of your mind. what you publicly speak aloud with your voice, and what you actually, tangibly do with your body. If these three fundamental levels of your being are in conflict, you will inevitably emit a chaotic, contradictory, and static-filled signal. And the results you get back from life, in your finances, your relationships, and your health, will, by necessity, become just as chaotic and contradictory. Every single negative, fearful thought that you allow to fester in your mind silently contradicts the positive affirmation you spoke aloud this morning. Every hesitant, procrastinating action you take today violently clashes with the bold, decisive declaration you made about your goals last week. These are not minor inconsistencies. They are conflicting commands being sent directly to your powerful subconscious engine. And you simply cannot expect the universe, or even your own internal system, to respond consistently and powerfully when you yourself are living in a perpetual state of internal contradiction. This is the very definition of cognitive dissonance, a state of internal stress and conflict that arises when your beliefs and your behaviors are at war with each other. This dissonance is not just a psychological discomfort. It is a state of profound energetic inefficiency. You are like a corporation spending millions on a marketing campaign, your words claiming to be environmentally conscious, while your internal operations, your thoughts, and your actual supply chain, your actions, are riddled with pollution and waste. The market, like the universe, eventually senses the hypocrisy, the misalignment, and the entire structure collapses. In the startup world, a founder can have the most brilliant pitch deck, words, and a revolutionary vision, thoughts. But if their product demo, actions, is buggy, or if their own energy, emotional state, radiates a lack of core belief, the venture capitalist, like your subconscious mind, will not invest. They are investing in coherence, not just in syllables. You say you believe in your own success, but you keep repeating, perhaps as a deeply ingrained habit, the internal limiting beliefs. I'm not sure I can really do it. I'm afraid of failing again. I'm just not ready yet. You write down big, audacious goals on paper, but your actual daily actions are filled with the familiar comforts of procrastination, the subtle avoidance of necessary risks, or the mindless chasing of what is easy instead of what is essential. You say you want to experience deep happiness and love, but you simultaneously harbor pessimistic assumptions about others. You default to defensive reactions in your relationships, and you cling to old, cynical beliefs like, they'll probably just leave me anyway. And then, standing amidst the predictable wreckage of these contradictions, you wonder why life keeps repeating these painful patterns. The same patterns you insist you do not want. I am telling you this fundamental principle not to assign blame or induce guilt, but to awaken you to a critical operational dynamic. Because I myself used to live perpetually trapped within that very contradiction. I once consumed dozens, perhaps hundreds, of books on success and personal development. I learned to speak inspiring words, to articulate grand visions, but my daily, mundane actions were still rooted in avoidance, in fear and in delay. And my powerful subconscious mind, that literal and loyal servant, did not care one bit what I had intellectually learned. It only paid relentless attention to the dominant, coherent frequency of what I actually thought in my moments of doubt, what I habitually said when I felt insecure, and what I consistently did, or failed to do, day after day. It was only when I began the difficult, often uncomfortable but ultimately liberating work of bringing those three critical elements, thought, word, and action, into alignment, into a state of unwavering internal coherence, that my life finally began to move forward with a sense of genuine clarity, power, and unstoppable momentum. Alignment, crucially, does not mean achieving some impossible state of robotic perfection, where you never again experience a negative thought or feel a moment of fear. It means cultivating a state of profound, radical honesty. If you are feeling afraid, alignment means acknowledging, yes, I am feeling afraid right now. Honest thought. But then, acting like someone who is courageously moving through that fear anyway. Aligned action. If you are not yet fully confident in a new endeavor, you do not pretend to be. Instead, you dedicate yourself with rigorous daily practice and training. Aligned action, required to genuinely build that confidence from the ground up. Because true alignment does not ultimately come from merely saying all the right, positive things. It comes only from living in profound integrity with what you say you believe, embodying your commitment. And the more consistently aligned you are in this way, the more your subconscious mind begins to recognize you on a deep, operational level as someone fundamentally trustworthy, someone whose commands are to be taken as law. At that precise point, every latent system, every hidden resource within your being begins to be systematically mobilized to support the new, coherent path you have clearly chosen. That is why you often see seemingly ordinary people achieve truly extraordinary results. They are not necessarily doing anything particularly new or revolutionary in terms of external strategy. They are just profoundly aligned. They think clearly about what they want. They speak about it with unwavering certainty, both to themselves and appropriately to others. And they act consistently and relentlessly towards its attainment. There is no internal tug-of-war draining their energy. There is no chronic self-doubt sabotaging their progress. There are no easy, convenient compromises breaking the sacred trust with themselves. And precisely because of that internal coherence, their subconscious mind functions not as a hidden obstacle, but as their most powerful and reliable companion on the journey. Let me ask you now, to bring this principle into sharp focus, thinking back over just the past week, how many of your dominant, repetitive thoughts truly served your highest goals and aspirations? How many of the words you spoke, both to yourself and to others, actually built you up, reinforced your chosen identity, instead of subtly tearing you down? And how many of your actual daily actions were concrete steps moving you directly toward your chosen future, rather than just tired, automatic repetitions of your past limitations? If you answer these questions with radical honesty, you will likely see, perhaps with startling clarity, that it is this internal inconsistency, this lack of alignment, that is the single most powerful thief of your precious creative energy. Each day you allow yourself to think predominantly negative thoughts, but then try to overlay them with a thin veneer of positive words, just for show. You scatter your signal and render it weak. Each day you consciously act in a way that fundamentally contradicts the core values you claim to believe in. You dig a deeper hole of incongruence inside yourself, a hole where real, unshakable conviction simply cannot grow. This is why the strongest, most influential people in any field are rarely the most outwardly knowledgeable or intellectually complex, but almost always the most profoundly honest in consistently living out what they claim to believe. Alignment is power. It is power because it creates a single, clear, unambiguous frequency. And when you finally learn to maintain that frequency, the universe itself is no longer confused about what you truly desire. Opportunities, people, circumstances, they all begin, almost magnetically, to respond. like a clear, perfect echo returning from the outside, precisely matching the unwavering signal you are now consistently emitting from within. No more frustrating dissonance. No more confusing, half-hearted results. Only a consistent, unfolding journey where every single step you take powerfully affirms your core belief. So I invite you, starting today, perhaps even starting in this very moment, to try something profoundly transformative. Every time you catch yourself thinking something negative or limiting, ask yourself, is this thought truly supporting or actively sabotaging the direction I have chosen? Every time you're about to speak, especially about yourself or your goals, pause for just half a second and ask, is this specific word I am about to utter nourishing or actively harming the positive image I am consciously building? And every single time you're about to act, especially when faced with a choice between comfort and growth, check in honestly. Does this specific action move me demonstrably closer to the person I want to become? Or is it just another easy compromise designed solely to avoid temporary difficulty? If you commit to practicing these 3 simple but powerful self-inquiry questions daily, you will gradually, almost automatically, create a potent new habit. The habit of living in conscious alignment. And once that way of being becomes your intrinsic nature, you will discover you no longer have to strain desperately to impress anyone, nor speak eloquent words merely to hide your perceived weaknesses. You will simply have to live honestly, authentically, true to what you think, what you believe, and what you consciously choose. I promise you, this commitment to internal coherence is one of the most profound and life-altering transformations you can ever possibly make. No external miracles are needed. You do not need to wait for anyone else's permission or approval. All it truly takes is the unwavering commitment to be radically honest with yourself, and then to consistently act, day by day, as if your powerful subconscious mind is always listening intently. Because it is listening, and it will believe you, it will support you, but only if and when you are finally, truly aligned. It is not, in the final analysis, the one who possesses the most encyclopedic knowledge, not the one who commands the most abundant material resources, nor even the one fortunate enough to be surrounded by the most extensive network of external support who will ultimately win this great and challenging game of life. It is, and always has been, the one who possesses the strongest, the deepest, the most unshakable belief. Because this world, this reality you are navigating, does not operate primarily on the linear, predictable, and often sterile rules of cold logic. It operates far more profoundly on the invisible but all-powerful force field of intense, unwavering, and coherent human conviction. Wherever there is someone, anyone, who dares to believe in their vision with such an unwavering certainty that doubt itself can find no crack, no crevice to enter, reality itself, the very fabric of circumstance, will begin to shift, to bend, and to realign itself around that powerful magnetic center. You do not need the entire world to agree with your vision before you begin. You do not need external validation or permission slips. You only need to be so steadfast, so congruent, so utterly whole in your own internal conviction that the world, in its own time, has no other choice but to pause, to listen, and ultimately, to yield. And then, step by patient step, energetic link by energetic link, everything in your experience begins to respond exactly in line with the non-negotiable truth you first dared to establish within your own mind. I say this to you not from the pages of abstract theory, but from the raw, often painful yet ultimately liberating laboratory of my own lived experience. Every single door that once seemed by all logical measures, to be permanently slammed shut in my face, eventually, miraculously, reopened. Not because I went out and earned a new prestigious degree, or because I managed to forge some clever, new, influential connection, but only and only because I began the difficult internal work of acting consistently like someone who no longer fundamentally doubted the path I was on. I consciously stopped asking the world for its permission through my hesitant energy. I deliberately stopped waiting passively for the mythical right moment to finally arrive. I actively stopped seeking the fleeting, unreliable validation found in the nods of external approval. And when I finally, truly stood up within myself, eyes fixed forward, walking through the world, as if nothing external possessed the ultimate power to stop me, something truly strange and powerful began to happen. Obstacles that had once seemed like impassive mountains began, almost inexplicably, to withdraw, to dissolve, to reveal hidden pathways around them, not because I had suddenly become special or magical, but simply because I stopped doubting. This is not just a personal philosophy. It is the fundamental economic engine of creation. Every great venture, every disruptive technology, every market-defying startup began not with unanimous consensus, but with the unshakable belief of a single founder or a small team, often in the face of overwhelming data suggesting failure. The market does not create belief. Belief, enacted with relentless resolve, creates the market. You must understand this fundamental dynamic. The world is not inherently against you. It holds no personal animosity towards your dreams. It is merely, and always, reflecting back to you with perfect, impartial accuracy the exact level of belief you yourself consistently emit. If you think of yourself as small, as inherently limited, you will be treated as weak. The world will mirror your own self-perception. If you believe, deep down, that what you desire is too far-fetched, too grandiose for someone like you will see every external circumstance as further proof, as immovable resistance. But if you learn to remain steadfast in your core conviction, not just in your convenient spoken words, but in your unwavering gaze, in your grounded posture, in your core attitude, in your every small daily decision, then slowly, inevitably, the world itself will begin to bend gently in your direction, not because you have brutally forced it through sheer willpower, but simply because you are finally resonating at a frequency, a level of coherence that few people ever dare to consistently maintain. The frequency of absolute, unshakable conviction. Oh, how the ordinary person lives, perpetually trapped. They want to see the proof before they will believe. But the successful creator, the entrepreneur, the leader, understands the reverse, more powerful law. They must believe first, and therefore, they get to see the proof. That is the essential, game-changing difference. And I want you, I implore you, to begin choosing to be the second kind. You do not need anyone else's unwavering support to begin this work. You do not even need anyone else's complete understanding of your vision. You only need to understand yourself so deeply, so completely, that no external criticism, however sharp, can shake you. No temporary, disappointing result can cause you to doubt your ultimate destination. Because you finally know, on a level deeper than logic, that all external results are merely the delayed reflection of your internal belief, not the primary cause of it. In the strange world of quantum physics, it is the observer who, through the act of measurement and expectation, collapses the wave of infinite possibilities into one single material particle. You are that observer. Your belief is the act of observation that tells the universe which possibility to make real. The more firmly, the more consistently you hold your chosen belief, the more the external world concedes. Others, observing this phenomenon from the outside, lacking understanding of the underlying energetic dynamics, will inevitably call you lucky. They will not see the thousands of times you repeated your internal commands in the silent darkness of the morning. Long before any tangible evidence had appeared, they will not know how you silently, stubbornly kept moving forward even when absolutely no one else believed in you. They will not understand why the universe itself seems inexplicably to favor you, opening doors for you that remain shut for them. But you will know. You will know because you consciously chose to live every single day as if your desired success was an absolute, preordained inevitability. And at that precise point of unwavering inner conviction, what you believe ceases to be merely a distant, hopeful dream. It solidifies, crystallizes, becomes your undeniable, lived reality. Yes, there will be moments when you are tested to your absolute limit. The results will be slow. People will doubt you. Even you, in your moments of deepest exhaustion, will occasionally want to turn back. But you must remember, those are the final tests. That is life checking your resolve, asking, are you sure? Are you really this new, powerful person? Or was it just a performance? And if you pass that test, if you refuse to break faith with yourself, a new gate will open. Not just to passively let you through, but to actively prove to you, through direct, undeniable experience, that belief itself, when held with unwavering intensity, is truly the most potent and creative force in the entire universe. You do not need to act tough or puff out your chest. You just need that quiet, internal steadiness. A person who never raises their voice, but who acts with absolute, unwavering consistency, will eventually make the entire world fall silent and listen. True strength does not lie in the outward display. It lies in the internal frequency at which you stubbornly refuse to give up. Every day, you repeat your choice. Every time you act, as if you are certain you'll get there. You carve that command deeper and deeper into your subconscious. And the world, whether it consciously wants to or not, whether it logically understands it or not, will inevitably have to rearrange itself, subtly but surely, to ultimately match that unwavering internal command. I am not telling you this journey is easy. It is the hardest work a human being can undertake, but I assure you, with every fiber of my being, that it is profoundly worth it. Because once you finally learn to consistently live as the person you believe you are becoming, you will discover you are no longer pathetically dependent on the fleeting approval or validation of others. You will no longer tremble uncontrollably before unexpected challenges. You will no longer waver disastrously in the face of temporary failure, because you will finally know, on a level that transcends all doubt, I have decided, and the world must adjust to my decision. If you can manage to hold the inner flame of your belief brightly enough, consistently enough, long enough, you will discover you no longer need to desperately shout to be noticed by the world. Your light itself, burning steadily from within, will naturally begin to attract everything that is meant to come towards you. The right opportunities, the aligned people, the supportive circumstances. They will come, not primarily because you relentlessly chased after them, but simply because you consciously chose to broadcast an irresistible, coherent frequency into the field. The frequency of unshakable, absolute certainty. And in that very moment of effortless attraction, you will finally understand, with profound clarity, why the entire universe must ultimately align, not to arbitrarily test your endurance, but simply to bow respectfully before the undeniable power of your own unwavering belief. I do not write this to give you a fleeting thrill. I say this to you so that you will remember it forever. The world will always, ultimately yield to the one who believes the strongest. And if you are brave enough, disciplined enough, and resolved enough to become that person, I promise you, no dream is too big. No summit is beyond your reach. Just believe. Believe until the world has no other choice but to respond to you as an irreversible, undeniable reality. A declaration is not just sound vibrating in the air. It is a law. It is a command issued from the sovereign center of your awareness, where you are not merely expressing a fleeting desire, but actively imposing a new, chosen reality upon an old, limiting set of circumstances. When I say, I command the impossible to bow down, this is not an act of blind arrogance. It is an act of profound sovereignty. Because if you do not consciously, deliberately declare the terms of your own existence, the world out there, with its cacophony of default limitations and collective fears, will gleefully declare the opposite over you. Either you command your circumstances, or your circumstances will, by default, teach you to live small. There is no neutral ground in the battle for your own potential. You cannot remain silent, a passive, neutral observer, and expect this world to somehow treat your unspoken desires with fairness or respect. I have witnessed, with a sense of profound tragedy, far too many people fail in their lives. Not from a fundamental lack of ability or talent, but simply because they never dared to affirm one simple, foundational truth to themselves. I am worthy of the life I desire. They dreamed quietly. They hoped in secret. They acted cautiously within the shadows. And they waited patiently for someone, somewhere, to appear and give them a signal. A sign, some external permission slip saying, now you are allowed to succeed. But the hard, cold truth of this world is that no one grants it. No one turns on the green light for you. No one opens the door. The door, my friend, only opens when you step forward and knock. Not with the hesitant tap of a beggar, but with the firm, unwavering decisiveness of a declaration. I will not live beneath my true potential for one more day. Your powerful subconscious mind, the loyal but literal engine executing the blueprint of your life, does not respond effectively to weak, whispered wishes. It only truly operates, only mobilizes its vast resources according to the clear, unambiguous directives it receives from its command center, you. If you merely think about a goal without ever declaring it, if you feel a desire but never act in accordance with that desire, then your ideas will forever drift, unanchored, in the unseen realm of potential. All creative energy requires an outlet, a defined channel through which to flow, and your declaration, your clear, spoken, non-negotiable commitment, is the first act that opens that channel, the act that begins to cut the path for reality to be formed. This is the essence of entrepreneurial action and venture creation. A startup does not begin when the funding arrives. It begins when the founder declares. A new future is possible, often in direct opposition to all available market data. This declaration is what philosophers of language like J.L. Austin called a performative utterance. It is a statement that, in the very act of its speaking, does something. It creates a new social or internal reality. When a founder declares, "We will disrupt this industry," they are not merely describing a future event. They are initiating its very creation by binding their own internal forces and the focus of their team to the task. Someone once asked me, quite logically, "But if I declare something that I haven't yet achieved, isn't that just lying?" My answer is, and always will be, you are not lying. You are establishing a new operating law for your reality. Every word you speak with conviction is a command sent deep into your subconscious. And if you repeat that command with unwavering commitment, your subconscious will begin to rewire your perceptions, your habits, and your actions to bring you closer and closer to that outcome. You are not pretending. You are commanding. You are not living in fantasy. You are building the blueprint. You do not need anyone else to confirm your potential. You are the only one who holds that ultimate authority. And if you refuse to voice the truth you feel within you, the world will, by default, assign you another, smaller, narrower, and safer definition. That is why I, as a personal and non-negotiable discipline, do not let a single day pass without repeating my own core declaration. Every morning, I look straight into the mirror, into my own eyes, and I say, I command the impossible to bow down. I will not be limited by past circumstances, by recorded history, or by the doubt of others. I choose the greater path. And when you do this long enough, with enough resonant belief, every single cell in your body starts to believe. Every action you take begins to shift. Every decision you make becomes stronger, clearer, because you have rewritten a lead role in the script of your own life. No one who has ever succeeded in any field did so without first making a declaration that, to others at the time, likely sounded crazy, delusional, or impossibly arrogant. But those very declarations, those moments of profound, unshakable commitment, are the true beginnings of all extraordinary things. When Napoleon Hill famously wrote, "Whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve," he was not glorifying naive optimism. He was describing, with perfect precision, the internal operating system through which reality functions. A system where clear intention, powerful declaration, and repeated, unwavering belief are the very tools that reshape the world. I do not need you to shout your declaration in the streets for all to hear, though you can if you choose. But I do need you to dare to speak it, clearly and loudly, inside the resonant chambers of your own mind. Say it so you can truly hear it. Say it so your subconscious mind no longer has any room left for doubt. Say it so that every single step you take afterward, every action, every decision, carries the undeniable weight of someone who has chosen to live with the highest, most profound responsibility, the responsibility to materialize what they have declared. Because if you do not consciously declare what you want, you will, by default, be swept along by the currents of what others impose upon you. If you do not say, with unwavering conviction, "I am the architect of my future," someone else will gladly step in and say for you, "You should just accept this. Your dream isn't realistic." I am telling you this not merely to make you feel inspired for a fleeting moment, but to make you feel called to action. Because if you are still listening to these words, it is highly likely you have, at some point, held a vision for your life far bigger than the one you are currently living. You once believed you were born to do more than just survive, more than just exist. But you have hidden that belief. You have remained silent in the face of your own immense possibilities. And I am telling you, right now, that it is time to break that sacred silence. Stand up wherever you are. Look straight ahead and declare it. I will not live one more day in resigned mediocrity. I will not wait another single moment for external permission. I command the impossible within me to yield to my will. You do not need proof to begin. Your declaration is the proof of your commitment. And if you stay faithful to that commitment, your entire life will begin to shift in accordance with it. Not because you got lucky, but because you finally dared to reshape your own reality with the power of your unconditional intention. From the very moment you dare to say, "I will not turn back," the universe itself will be forced to begin opening pathways that it once wisely hid from those who were not yet truly ready to walk them. I want you to remember this. No miracle happens if you continue to keep silence in your mind. But a single declaration from a steadfast heart, repeated daily, can shatter the entire chain of old destinies you once believed to be unchangeable. Choose your declaration. Live with it. Let it become the silent pulse in everything you do. And watch as what was once called impossible recedes, step by step, until it can no longer stand in front of you. Because you are the one who commands. There are enemies that carry no swords. They speak no audible threats, and they enter your life without making a sound. Yet they are more persistent, more silent, and infinitely more effective at the destruction of your destiny than any visible disaster or external adversary. They are the 6 ghosts of fear. They do not appear all at once in a great, declared battle. Instead, they linger, like unseen phantoms, in the shadowed corridors of your mind, waiting patiently for a single moment of your weakness, a crack in your resolve, to seep into your bloodstream and quietly sever the spiritual lifeline within you, all without making a single noise. And if you do not learn to name them, to drag them into the light of your conscious awareness and see them for what they truly are, you will never fully understand what has kept you feeling small, hesitant, and fragile, even when the true fire of your ambition still burns brightly inside you. I have seen, with my own eyes, people brimming with raw talent, their minds overflowing with brilliant, world-shifting ideas. Yet their entire lives remain nothing more than rough, unfinished drafts, ambitious projects never fully refined, never completed. This is not because they lacked opportunity or because the world was uniquely cruel to them. It is because they lived, often unknowingly, as a host for one of these insidious ghosts. Sometimes, tragically, for all 6, they do not show up clearly, robed in black, announcing their malevolent intent. They arrive disguised as your own voice, as your own most reasonable, logical, and prudent thoughts. They are the whispers in your head that sound just like you. This is far too risky. What will people in my industry or my family think? What if I pour my life into this and I still fail? It's not the right time. The market is too volatile. I should wait. Or the most insidious and paralyzing of all, I don't really think I deserve this level of success anyway. These thoughts may sound reasonable, like sound business acumen or wise caution, but they are, in truth, the sophisticated language of darkness. They are programmed, deeply embedded thought patterns, energetic viruses shaped by a world that, by its very nature, is designed to train you for compliance, for safety, for fitting in, not for truly, boldly rising up. The first and most pervasive of these ghosts is the fear of poverty. This is not just the abject fear of destitution. For many, it is the more subtle but equally powerful fear of financial inconvenience, the fear of not having enough, the fear of losing the stability you currently possess. It is the suffocating scarcity mindset that infects every decision. It makes you unconsciously choose the illusion of a safe, predictable salary over the magnificent, terrifying risk of your own greatness. You may not even notice it, but this fear causes you to operate your entire life, your career, your business, like someone who is perpetually being chased by failure, instead of like someone who is moving with calm, sovereign conviction toward abundance. In the world of startups, this fear is a silent venture killer. It is the founder who is so terrified of their monthly burn rate that they refuse to make the critical, strategic investments in marketing, in key talent, or in product development that are required for scalable growth, thereby, in their quest for safety, guaranteeing their own eventual irrelevance. It is the company that deliberately chooses to serve a small, safe, predictable market niche instead of taking on the larger, transformative, but more uncertain one, locking itself into a low-growth trajectory from day one. This fear forces you to trade your most precious, non-renewable asset, your time, for a flat wage. It makes you trade your very soul for the illusion of stability, and your boundless dreams for the grim, gray reality of mere survival. You are not lacking ambition. You are simply so terrified of losing the little you have that you never dare to truly, fully reach for what is valuable. This fear locks you into the narrow prison of your present circumstances, and then, most tragically, whispers to you that this prison is, in fact, all of reality. The second ghost is the fear of criticism. This is the silent assassin of all true innovation, all authentic creation. You begin to doubt the validity of your own unique idea, not because it is objectively wrong, but simply because you imagine someone, somewhere, laughing at you, judging you, or dismissing you. You begin to treat the imagined opinions of others, often uninformed, fearful others, as the sacred standard for what you should or should not pursue. And once you voluntarily hand that immense power over your own internal state to the anonymous, external crowd, you have locked yourself in a psychological cage that does not even need a physical lock. This is the entrepreneur who builds their revolutionary product in stealth mode for years, perpetually refining it, terrified to launch a minimum viable product, MVP. They fear the criticism of their imperfect first attempt, not realizing that this very criticism, this market feedback, is the oxygen their idea needs to survive, iterate, and evolve. They are protecting their ego at the expense of their vision. Nothing, absolutely nothing, suffocates raw talent and bold ideas faster than this neurotic obsession with being universally accepted. Great people, great founders, great leaders do not chase agreement. They act in profound, unwavering alignment with the truth they feel within. And they learn to treat all external criticism not as a personal verdict on their worth, but as simple, neutral data. The third ghost is the fear of ill health. This often manifests not as a rational, balanced concern for genuine well-being, but as a repetitive, obsessive, anxious loop of negative thinking that, in a cruel irony, weakens your body and your resolve. This is the nocebo effect in powerful action. Every time you worry excessively, every time your mind defaults to imagining the worst-case scenario for your health or for the financial health of your startup, your loyal, literal body reacts as if that imagined outcome is already real. It floods your system with the corrosive stress hormones of cortisol and adrenaline, compromising your immune system, clouding your strategic judgment, and accelerating the burnout of your single most valuable economic asset. You. If this fear rules your life, you stop living fully. You merely exist in a state of hypervigilance, perpetually scanning the horizon for the next potential threat. But life, true life, is an invitation to act, to engage, to risk, not a safety exam to be passed with a perfect score. The fourth ghost is the fear of losing love. This is the fear of emotional abandonment. This is the fear that makes you hold yourself back from your true potential. You do not speak your dissenting, innovative truth in a critical meeting because you fear alienating your boss or your colleagues. You stay silent about a core value violation. You tolerate a mediocre co-founder relationship or a toxic client, all for the fear of losing that illusory feeling of being needed or connected. But true, aligned, valuable relationships, in life and in business, never ask you to shrink, to become silent, or to be fake. If you find you have to systematically abandon your own authentic self in order to keep someone else's approval, then what you are desperately holding on to is not a valuable partnership. It is a hostage situation. This fear is a terrible negotiator. It causes you to trade away your freedom, surrender your courage, and most of all, lose your own irreplaceable self. The fifth ghost is the fear of old age. You watch the clock of your life relentlessly ticking, and you think, with a quiet sense of despair, it is too late for me. This is perhaps the most tragic of all economic miscalculations. The sunk cost fallacy applied not to a failing project, but to your life. You irrationally believe you are too invested in your current, perhaps unfulfilling career path to ever pivot. I've already put in 20 years. I can't start over now. But time itself has never been the true barrier. The real barrier is the unwillingness to write off a sunk cost, a cost that is already gone, in order to free up your capital, your life energy, for a new, higher return investment. No one is ever objectively too old to begin again. Many are just too tired, too broken down by a lifetime of yielding to fear to ever start. And the final, sixth ghost, the one that often stands behind and gives power to all the others, is the fear of death. This is not just the rational, biological fear of physical cessation. It is the deeper, philosophical fear of endings of any kind. The fear of the unknown, the terror of ultimate disappearance. This fear makes you desperately, irrationally cling to what is old and familiar, even if it is painful or obsolete. It makes you resist necessary, healthy change. It makes you refuse to let go of a business model that is clearly dying, a job that is no longer relevant, a relationship that has run its natural course. But you cannot truly, fully live. You cannot take the necessary risks required to grow if you are constantly, paralyzingly afraid of loss. Everything in this manifested world is, by its very nature, temporary. The most beautiful, the most profound, the most successful ventures in lives come from daring to live fully today, as if this day truly means something, without demanding the impossible guarantee of a permanent tomorrow. When you finally stop fearing the end, you finally, truly begin to live. I share these 6 ancient ghosts with you not to make you more anxious, but to hand you a diagnostic tool, a powerful lamp to carry into the shadowed, unexamined cellars of your own mind. I share them so you can begin to look directly at them, to call them by their true names. From now on, every time you hesitate, every time you find yourself delaying a crucial decision, every time you reflexively say later or I can't, you must pause and ask yourself this critical question. Is one of these 6 ghosts guiding my hand right now? Am I acting from a place of empowered belief? Or am I reacting from the cold, contracting energy of fear? And if the honest answer is fear, then your first and most important action is not to try and push harder against the external world. It is to consciously, deliberately step away from the internal influence of that fear. The truth is, you cannot destroy these ancient ghosts with a single, heroic act of will. They are too deeply programmed. But you can train your mind to see them, to name them, and to say with the quiet, emerging authority of a new master, I recognize you. I see you, but you no longer have the authority to command me. That conscious disidentification, that severing of your awareness from the automatic program, is the true beginning of a liberated mind. And only a liberated mind can create, act, love, and reach toward an extraordinary life without being perpetually dragged backward by the insidious whispers in the dark. You do not need to be perfect to step out of these shadows. You just need to be honest enough to finally admit, I have lived with fear for far too long. And the very moment you finally look your fear directly in the eye, instead of continuing to obediently turn away from it, you have already, in that instant, begun to win. Because the light, to be effective, does not need to be massive. It just needs to be lit. And you, from this moment on, are the one holding that flame. These two great enemies, these twin jailers of the human spirit, do not knock on your door like common thieves, nor do they roar like approaching storms, giving you fair warning to prepare. Instead, they operate silently, from within, quietly shaping how you think, how you live, and how you relentlessly, methodically limit yourself every single day of your life. On one side, you have the cold, contracting gravitational pull of the fear of poverty. This is not just the rational concern of managing resources. It is a deep, primal terror that makes you shrink your most magnificent, expansive dreams down to a realistic or sensible size, one that can fit comfortably inside the cramped, suffocating confines of your current wallet. On the other, you have the insidious, whispering, social poison of the fear of criticism. It is the life of the steady paycheck that slowly strangles the soul. But from the inside, it is the suffocating, unbearable weight of a life that was never allowed to stretch to its true, magnificent, and intended height. It is the existential despair the philosopher Kierkegaard spoke of. The despair of not being your true self, of being lost in the finite crowd, rather than standing as a sovereign individual. I have seen, with a profound and personal sense of tragedy, people far more intelligent than me, individuals brimming with more raw talent than I could ever hope to possess, live out their entire lives far beneath their own potential, trapped and neutralized by these two forces. They fear, with a primal terror, not having enough money to survive. And they fear, with an equally potent social terror, what others will think of them if they dare to live differently, to step outside the prescribed, safe, and mediocre lines. One person once told me, their voice a mixture of passion and defeat. I've had this brilliant idea for a new startup for 5 years, but I just can't pull the trigger. If I quit my job and it fails, I'll lose everything. I looked him straight in the eye and asked the one question he had been spending 5 years successfully avoiding. What have you already lost in those 5 years just because you did not act? What is the profound, compounding opportunity cost of your inaction? The skills you never built, the market you never captured, the person you never became? He fell silent, because the answer was palpable in the air between us. The hidden cost of delay, the silent price of inaction, the compound interest you pay on a life lived in passive fear, is always, inevitably, and exponentially greater than the acute, temporary cost of any single, honorable failure. The fear of poverty, in its modern form, is the ultimate engine of economic stagnation, both for the individual and for society. It is what keeps you clinging to that steady paycheck, a safe career path, even when you know, deep down, that that very paycheck is the golden handcuff, the comfortable ration that nourishes your captivity and keeps your true dream, your true venture, perpetually starved. This is the psychological trap of loss aversion, the pain of losing. Your current stable salary feels, as economists like Daniel Kahneman have proven, about twice as powerful as the potential pleasure of succeeding in your new venture. Your mind is biologically wired to protect what it has, even if what it has is mediocre. This is the Brewster innovator's dilemma. Applied to your own life, you become the established, stable company, so terrified of risking your current revenue stream, the paycheck, that you refuse to invest in the disruptive, uncertain innovation, your dream, that holds your entire future. In your quest for stability, you guarantee your own stagnation and eventual obsolescence. You cannot build a billion-dollar startup. You cannot create a masterpiece. You cannot build a new life from the contracted, defensive crouch of a preservation mindset. No one, not an individual, not a corporation, not a nation, ever becomes wealthy and free by saving their way out of fear. Every single person, every single entity that has ever built real sustainable wealth began with a courageous step into the unknown, a step that was, by its very nature, indefinite, but was fueled by a belief that was stronger than the fear. The fear of criticism is even more dangerous, more insidious. It does not just stop you from acting. It subtly, pervasively, rewires your entire definition of right and wrong. You begin to filter your own divine, unique impulses through a single, grotesque question. Will this make me look weird to others? And the very moment that question becomes your primary filter, your core operational metric, you have stepped decisively away from the center of your own being, from your authentic sovereignty. You are no longer living by your true internal values. You are merely performing for an audience that, for the most part, is not even paying attention. But as the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre would argue, you are living in bad faith, defining yourself by the gaze of the other, sacrificing your authentic project of becoming for the sake of being seen as an acceptable object by the crowd. No one, not ever, truly respects someone who only lives to please the consensus. True admiration, true influence, is reserved only for the one who dares to be honest, who dares to be authentic, especially in a world that relentlessly, sometimes violently, encourages conformity. I have been laughed at, openly and to my face, when I first shared my own visions. Some said, "That's just a naive dream." Others, more pragmatic, said, "You don't have the background, the pedigree, the capital to even attempt that." But every single time I heard that criticism, I had to train myself with iron discipline not to ask the disempowering question, "Are they right?" Instead, I forced myself to ask the only question that matters. Are they living the life I intend to create? And the answer was always, unequivocally, no. They do not live inside my mind. They do not feel the specific hunger that drives me. They do not know what it is like to lie awake at night, unable to bear the thought of dying with my true music still locked inside me. So why on earth would I ever allow their words, born from their fears and their limitations, to become the sacred guide for my life? You need to understand this clearly and accept it as a non-negotiable cost of admission for a great life. If you are not willing to be misunderstood, criticized, and even ridiculed for a while, you will never, ever get to live as the person you truly want to become. Every great person, every innovative startup, every paradigm-shifting idea in history was, by definition, first misunderstood, then criticized, and often violently underestimated, right up until the moment it finally succeeded. And at that exact moment, the very same people who once doubted you will be the first to return, praising your vision and your courage. So how do you overcome these two towering, ancient enemies? not by pretending to be a fearless superhero, but by clearly, courageously identifying their whispers in every small, daily decision. Every time you find yourself rejecting an opportunity, you must pause and ask, am I saying no because this truly does not align with my core mission? Or am I saying no simply because I am afraid of losing the money I have? Every time you hesitate to speak your unique idea in a meeting, you must ask, am I silent because the idea is not yet fully formed? Or am I silent simply because I am afraid the others in the room will think I am strange? These simple, honest questions will relentlessly pull you back to the truth. And the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, is always, always the beginning of your freedom. You do not have to be completely fearless to start. You just have to stop letting your fear be the one making the final decisions for you. Let your action take the lead. Let your courage set the example. And let time itself prove the validity of your choice, not the consensus of the crowd. People may talk behind your back, but they cannot live your life for you. And the one who dares to walk alone, for a time, in service of what they know is right, is always the first to be welcomed at the finish line. A finish line that the fearful, conforming crowd never even gets to see. I am not telling you this journey will be easy, but I can promise you this one thing. If you can finally, truly overcome these two primary ghosts, the fear of poverty and the fear of criticism, there is almost nothing else in this world that can truly stop you from achieving whatever you desire. Because at that point, you are not just wealthier in material terms. You have achieved something infinitely more valuable. You have become free. And that internal freedom is the rarest, most powerful, and most attractive kind of wealth there is. It means everything you do from then on comes from conscious choice, not from unconscious reaction. From clear intention, not from desperate defense. From unwavering trust, not from pervasive doubt. And I believe, if you have stayed with me this far, it may be time for you to sit down, write out all the times you have let these two fears lead the way, and then consciously decide to burn those limits to the ground. Not with fire, but with the new, non-negotiable commitment to live differently, starting today. Because you simply cannot keep living so small when you know something so big is buried inside you. The true potential you have postponed for far too long. If this message helped you identify one of these fears in your own life and gave you a sense of clarity or strength, consider sharing it. You likely have a relative or a friend who is also living in this perfect prison. And this might be the key that helps them see the door. Liking or subscribing is a simple way to affirm your own commitment to choosing freedom over fear.